Hello everybody and a very warm welcome to wherever you are around the world to our presentation of the GT World Challenge Asia Esports Series presented by Tarmac Works. Today is round 2 day from the beautiful Laguna Seca. My name is Paul Jeffrey and I'm delighted to have alongside me Mr. Ben Consanguris. Ben, welcome to the show. Laguna Seca, 89 cars. It's going to be an incredible race day today.
Absolutely, Paul. Laguna Seca, one of my personal favourite tracks. A short circuit of just about 80 seconds in these GT3 cars. A lot of medium speed turns. Not a massive amount of braking zones, but certainly a great place to go racing. It's a short track. We've got a lot of cars, both in our sim and our pro race. And we are looking forward to just massive action across the next couple of hours.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. This is the second round of the championship. Last time out, we were at the Temple of Speed, that is Monza, and David Addison, who's the commentator for Monza and also the Real World GT World Challenge Championship. David, we've got you on voice today. Laguna Seca, that offers up a very unique and very different challenge, doesn't it, to these drivers?
Paul, absolutely right. I mean, it's a different sort of a circuit. You've got lots of undulations in this. You've got the corkscrew, which is a real test. And I think what's going to be interesting is to see how the real-world drivers cope with all of this. Because let's be honest about this, they created absolute carnage, didn't they, at the first corner, that first chicane at Monza. Comes back to a point Ben has made in many of these broadcasts that there is a big, big difference between the experience that a sim driver has and a real-world driver has. And just because you're good in a real car doesn't mean you're good on a sim. They are the ones, I think, the real-world drivers that will have gone away, that have done a bit more homework, a bit more preparation. The key to them, especially given that the first corner is the Andretti hairpin, key to them is going to be keep out of trouble.
And that is a very good point. We did have quite a lot of controversy, quite a lot of activity and action, shall we say, last time out at Monza. But there's been a good period of time now since that last race. The drivers will have been in their rigs, in their cockpits, practicing getting the laps down for Laguna Seca. Because folks at home, don't forget, this is a 4-round championship. So we've scored points in Monza. We're racing for the Pro and the Am sim drivers and the Pro and the Am real world drivers, 2 separate championships in their entirety. And Ben, did anything stand out to you from the on-track performances of our drivers last time out in Italy?
I think the surprise, both in the Charity Cup at Suzuka when we kicked off the Asian Series and also this first round from Monza a couple of weeks ago, is that the talent over in Asia is incredibly high. Perhaps in Europe we're not so aware of all of these drivers. Of course, usually European races happening in European time zones don't necessarily get populated by too many Asian drivers because it's a bit of a commitment to get up at 2 in the morning and then do a 6-hour race. But to see all these guys come together, to race together, to have such an incredible entry list, and to see the progress of our real world drivers as well, from this Charity Cup through to now, I think that must be 6 or 7 weeks between the two, maybe even more actually, because I think we did our Charity Cup in August. I'm expecting to see the pace increase, the control increase, and only it will get better and better from our real world drivers as we get to the end of our 5-round championship. The 5th round is voted, of course, by you guys. So we know the 4 tracks we're visiting, but the 5th round is down to you, the fans.
Fantastic. Great answer there, Ben. And now we're talking about that championship. Let's have a look at the standings and see where the positions stand after the first race. So in the Sim Driver Am Championship, Carl Peterson took home 25 points for race victory ahead of Andrew O'Hara in second place. And in the Pro Sim Driver standings, it's Joseph De Jesus the 4th and King Long Lee at the head of the standings. We used 25 points for the win, 18 for second and down. So Kevin C and we've got Zhao as well in second place for the real Am Championship. Remember, pros and Ams are racing in this series. And the real world pros, it's Dushaven Padiache who takes the initial advantage with 25 points ahead of Zhao Tong Lang. So 25 for a win, 18 for second, all the way down to 10th position. It's a very tight point standing. You can't afford to have an off weekend. You can't afford to have a no score or get involved, Ben, in one of those many accidents that we saw last time out at Monza.
And that was the key, wasn't it? The result at the end of especially our real world race, but also our sim race, didn't necessarily reflect that we saw from the drivers, the chaos. This strategy of the big things about this championship is there is that compulsory pit stop. You don't necessarily have to change tyres. You don't necessarily have to put any fuel in your car, but you can if you want. And some people made the wrong call in terms of strategy, and that's why they didn't end up where they really should have done. So yes, that is our championship order right now, but I expect it to change come the end of today.
And that's a really good point, actually, that there is strategy involved in these races. They're 60-minute races, so they're shorter, David Allison, in comparison to the real-world GT World Challenge Championships throughout the world. But at the same time, you've got to be conservative. You've got to stay out of trouble as well. And as a driver, what's the key to succeeding in these short but strategic races?
It's a flat-out sprint, isn't it, for an hour? And you've got keep out of trouble. First corner, qualify well, because if you are up the front of the grid, you're away from all of those cars around you. You'd either like to be at the front and away, or if you've had a really bad qualifying, get at the back and let the accident happen ahead of you. So keep out of trouble, try and qualify well so you're not in the mix of cars all around you. But then you've got to think about that again in terms of when do you make your pit stop. Now, if you're running in, and we saw it at Monza, a 4, 5, 6 car battle pack, and you can't make progress, you can't get through the traffic, bail, pit, get that pit stop out of the way. That might help your race. But it can work the other way. You could be on your own, you could rejoin in traffic and therefore end up going slower. So you've got to have your wits about you and try, if you can, to read the race behind you, work out how long a pit stop is going to take and where that time lost is going to put you in the order, because you could come out with cars all around you and you've actually lost the benefit of your early stint. So timing is key.
Yep, absolutely. And of course, Laguna Seca is a very short racetrack in comparison to some of the venues that we visit. A very difficult pit entry and pit exit as well. But we'll talk more about that in a moment. Let's have a look at the drivers that will be participating in these races. So the entry list for the Sim Driver Championship, we have a lot of returning names. A lot of the drivers that took part in the first round at Monza, and also the Charity Cup event in Suzuka will be on the grid. We've got 89 drivers across the two fields. That is an incredible number of racers from all around the Asia Pacific region running the different marks of car. And of course, just like the real GT World Challenge Championship, Ben, we've got different manufacturers, different marks taking place, different ideas of how these cars run on the racetrack. And Laguna Seca is a very different kettle of fish compared to some of the other championship race tracks that we use. Have you got any particular brand you think is going to be strong, or any kind of initiative and design of car that's going to come to the forefront at a track like this?
Yeah, it's going to be different to what we saw at Monza for sure. It's a different character of track. There's a lot of medium speed turns at Laguna Seca, and of course the famous corkscrew as well. So we'll see the balance of power from the different manufacturers change. The teams have, and the drivers have to their particular car for the full championship. So we will see a balance of power change a little bit. I don't think we've got ballast like we saw in the European Series. So the winning manufacturer in the European Series got penalised massively by carrying kilos of ballast. Don't think that exists here in Asia. But what we want to look out for, especially in this first sim race, is the fact that we have, yes, the pros that we've seen throughout the whole year, but we've got 19 qualified drivers from the hot lap competition, which you guys, if you've got a decent enough talent, could be in for the next round. 19 drivers, a lot of them the same, but a few good names that we didn't see in that first round, including Andika Raman Mulana, who I can tell you is qualified on the second row of the grid. So watch out for some of those new names that are AMs, but could actually challenge the pro category drivers.
Fantastic. Of course, great to see new talent. We did Europe, we've done the Americas, and now it's time for the Asia region in the SRO Esport Official Championships. It's presented by Tarmac Works, is this Asia series, so we're great to have Tarmac Works on board with us as well. And we can't wait to bring to the widest audience possible, showing a showcase of what these Asia region drivers are capable of doing in a professional, highly organised sim racing esport activity. And of course, on that subject, a shout out to the event organisers as well. It's a mammoth undertaking to bring people from all around the world together in one virtual space to broadcast these races. The commentary team that are based in different countries, myself in the studio, the race direction team all over the world, and the drivers in Australia, Hong Kong. We've got such an incredible setup, and it's wonderful to see that, and see that we shall do. I am going to hand over to Ben Constanduris and Mr. David Addison to get to the track and see this opening race for the Sim Pro and Am drivers.
Paul, thanks very much. Let's go racing then, everybody. It is the second round of the GT World Challenge Asia Esports Championship. Welcome to Laguna Seca. 2.3 miles long, this circuit. We are in the California sunshine. It's going to be an early morning set for the game, and the grid will venture out in a moment. Everyone will connect with, after the qualifying session, Andrew Lawrenson lining up on pole position then, with Andrew O'Hara alongside him. Pole position being on the inside of the road, because you've got the run to the first corner, which is then a left-hander. And you'll notice from the colours that it is an all laundry house front row, this very enthusiastic team that has arrived with a splash of colour. The second row of the grid, you've got Yuki Shirakawa and Andika Maulana. The third row, this is where you find, first of all, Carl Peterson on the inside, the man that won the first race outright, even though, remember, he is from the AM class. Brilliant job he did at Monza. And it is Joseph de Jesus, the pro class leader, who dominated the bulk of the race but lost out after the pit stops. He will line up sixth on the grid as the cars now blast away. Remember, it is a rolling start, so the drivers make the run now up into the Andretti hairpin, and this is, I think, on the basis of what we saw at Monza, Ben, going to be wide open, because picking a winner is very difficult indeed.
Well, look at the qualifying list there. Porsche, BMW and Mercedes and Ferrari on the front four places on our grid. There doesn't seem to be a dominant manufacturer really at all. Good to see some Hondas, some Nissans, some Aston Martins a bit further down. Really, perhaps these drivers a little bit more free with their choices of car. I'm pretty sure they were locked into these choices for the full year. But of course, with so many AM competitors coming in, people coming in race by race, qualifying through a hot lap, that is giving us new names to learn, but also new cars and new liveries to see. And of course, I think even our friend Joseph de Jesus has got himself a new livery there, thanks to his association with Tarmac Works. I don't remember it being quite so sexy as that last time out.
It's called evolution, isn't it? Something like that. Well, he certainly has a point to prove. The Laundry House team, based on Leighton House, if you've got a very long memory, you'll remember Leighton House as a sponsor and then as a constructor, in quotes, in Formula One, but also sponsoring Group C Porsche 962s and other cars within Japanese motorsport. This is a team that's got drivers in this sim championship as well as in the pro category. Getting a look at the circuit, narrow sections to it, some very testing elements here. The road dips downhill, climbs up the other side. So it is going to be Andrew Lawrenson, the man in number 911. What else could it be but a Porsche, who will start on pole position with his teammate Andrew O'Hara lining up alongside him. But as they head towards the corkscrew, this is certainly going to be another pinch point during the course of the race. Now, are people going to pit early, get it out of the way, and then concentrate on going to the end, do you feel, Ben? Or are they going to try and build up a cushion and pit late in the race where they know what gap they have to play with?
I think you were totally correct in the pre-race to suggest that you have to analyse the situation you're in at the time, don't you? Because with such a short track, only 1 minute and 20 a lap time around here, traffic is going to be huge and very, very key. We've got 42 on the entry list on the left-hand side there. So it's going to be a very busy track. And yes, you might be in traffic before the pit stop, but you might also come out in traffic after the pit stop. And you may want a spotter, a team manager, looking at what you're doing. Here the cars are then on the start-finish straight. We're about to go racing, but some big gaps at the front.
Well, indeed, it's a bit untidy, isn't it? So Andrew Lawrenson gets away now then as the clock starts, but he was at least a row up on his teammate Andrew O'Hara as they dive up towards the Andretti hairpin for the first time then. Dive into the corner, out wide goes the BMW, so O'Hara is in jeopardy. Works like that, being turned around is Joseph Teixeira. There is mayhem, I'm afraid, because he tagged another as he spun. He's then been collected, and what that now means is that the leading four will break away. A gap has opened up after the big contact that we've had down at turn one. So it's Andrew Lawrenson, the race leader. He now will try to make good his escape. There's O'Hara in second place. Yuki Shirakawa runs in third, and then fourth looks like being Andika Maulana. But after that, you've got a separate race because these four, Ben, have checked out already.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to have a lot of cars with damage after contact there. There was a lot of people going into each other. We've got one driver that didn't even start. I think that's Brian Mabry, Brett Mabry, sorry. He's already back into the pits, but after one lap, I'm keen to see if everybody goes into the pit lane and gets cars repaired. That, I think, if you've got a car that's been involved in that accident, the BMW going off, that was Andrew O'Hara from second, understeering wide at the penultimate corner.
Indeed so, more time lost then. This is the second element of it, if you like, where you've got people surviving. Look, so many heading to the pit lane. Now, is this because of damage, or is this to get that regulation stop out of the way? Either way, at the end of lap one, Andrew Lawrenson leads the way. Second is Yuki Shirakawa. In third place, it is Andika Maulana. Good battles going on lower down the field, including number 22 of Bank Panathit with his Vitana Motorsport Lamborghini. He's trying to attack. He is also trying to fend off the battles going on all around him, running in 10th place when he crossed the line. But Lawrenson's first lap, possibly with a slightly anticipatory start, has certainly given him a good cushion, Ben. 1.7 seconds already.
Unbelievable amount of cars in pit lane. I think 14, I count, have come into the pits to get themselves repaired. Terry Rayton's in there. Carl Pedersen, our winner from the first race, into the pits on the first lap. They'll be repairing their damage, and they will also count towards their pit stop. So it's not the end of the world for any of them. They can get their head down and bang in some decent laps. By the end of the race, when the front group have to pit, they could be back in the bull seat. We've still got 57 minutes remaining. If they've got a car that can be repaired and the damage isn't too great and they don't lose too much time repairing the car, then it is not over yet. But there are plenty of drivers who have already taken their pit stops and are about a minute back from our leading group.
Okay, the danger is losing a lap, but there's another one in strife there. 31 gets involved in it, Russell Rays. Now he carries on, but who was that got elbowed out of the way just up the road ahead of him? Certainly one has gone missing. It might have been the Nissan of Isaac Norman, I'm afraid to say. Let's see as they come then now up towards the completion of lap number 2. So Russell Race goes over the line in the Audi there, the Sim Racing PH car, the R8 LMS. Remember, he's 10th in the championship. Battle on for third place, though. Now there, look, is the Mercedes. This is the car in the hands of Andika Maulana. He's going after Shirakawa, so second and third they run. But Andrew Lawrenson is getting away up the road all the time. 2 seconds to the good now. And again off the road there goes O'Hara. He's done it once. He enjoyed it so much. He's off the road again. But that just drops him more time against the leaders, Ben, doesn't it?
Yeah, actually, I think what the problem is with Andrew O'Hara is he's got a very poor internet connection. You can see it on the timing screen. His bar is red. He's in jeopardy of being thrown out of this race. And we are seeing the car actually artificially falling off the track. He's not actually driving it off the track, but the feed is so poor from his particular connection that the game is predicting where he is and therefore predicting that he's in the gravel when actually he's on the track.
Right, I'm with you. So it's all down to his internet connection, as the leader hasn't got a great one. The more yellow it goes, the more that yellow bar rises, the weaker the connection gets. Over the line goes Andrew Lawrenson. The gap's coming down, though, interestingly. 1.6 seconds now between him and Yuki Shirakawa. Now, Lawrenson was a non-finisher, effectively, at Monza. He was a notional 39th, so in terms of the championship, he's absolutely nowhere. But Shirakawa, then, running in second place, he accelerates along the far section of circuit now, trying to bring down that lead gap. Shirakawa was also effectively out of the running at Monza, 35th in the classification. So neither of them featuring as far as points. Both, therefore, need a good result out of this race, whereas Andika Maulana, third on the racetrack at the moment, he did finish 4th in class at Monza. So for points, he's looking pretty good, isn't he?
Yes, absolutely. And I think we kind of rip up the first round results and start afresh here because we've got so many cars out of position. Joseph De Jesus, fastest man in qualifying in Monza, didn't get it all his own way in the race. And I think he may be a retiree. We saw him turned around. We saw plenty of contact into his car. And he has one of the 3 drivers yet to leave the pit lane. And so I think he may well be out of this race. Jos Pervian also a driver, number 14, out of this race. And as I mentioned, Brett Maybury also staying in pit lane. Plenty of people choosing to go into the pits early. A lot of cars, look, up to 25th haven't pitted, but from that onwards, they've all pitted already.
Even if he goes out, De Jesus has got a drive-through penalty, I noticed, as also has Brett Maybury, who you said had barely taken the start. Well, I think he has kind of joined in, but we'll double-check in the timing software in the game. But you're right, lots of people bailing for the pit lane. Carl Peterson there, the man that won from the AM class outright at Monza. Now, he's down in 30th place. I think you said he'd already made a pit stop. Question here, which could be significant, Ben, is did he stay on the lead lap, do you know?
Well, of course, we don't have safety cars, so we're never going to have a position where we're going to concertina up, and that's going to be a huge disadvantage. But he is... I can't quite see if he's a lap down or not yet. The pit stop is a long pit stop here, but probably not quite long enough unless you have to repair your car to be a full lap down. Interestingly, though, the BMW of O'Hara, I hope, is in the pits rather than has retired out of the race. But I did see 2 cars heading into the pits from the top of our timing screens. O'Hara now down in 21st.
Mia Rose going strongly there, 9.09, and her Aston Martin starting now to go after the Laundry House Honda just up the road ahead. That is Sergei Mironenko, the 36-year-old. He's done a bit of real-world karting. But Mia Rose doing a really good job here, the Australian. She runs in the AM class as well. There she goes. Really good livery that she's chosen for that car. Heads over the line. Lead gap is going up again. Lawrence getting away from Shirakawa. 5 laps are in the book. And yeah, just going back to Carl Peterson, the thought behind my question about him being on the lead lap was that if he has got that regulation stop out of the way now, the damage is cured, and he's got good pace, as other people serve the stops, he will just gain and gain and gain and get him back up the order for points, won't he?
Look at the left-hand side of the screen. The drivers that have the green highlight on their name are the drivers that have served their pit stop. So actually, Pedersen came out of the pits, 5th driver who has made their stop. He's got Law, Terry Rayton, I think, is the first of the cars that have pitted. Now, that would have been all down to the fact that some will have had to be in the pits longer than others because of the damage to their car. But at least they've ticked that box. I don't think there was any need to do anything in the pits for this race. Fuel was good and tyres would have lasted. So basically, it's just to tick the box that you've been through the pit stop. You've got to take 1 litre of fuel only. That's the only regulation. And this is a nice little battle.
It is. It's Nigel Chua, who's a long way down in 31st place, trying to get up and pass number 37 of Yohei Im in the Audi. For the moment, it is the Audi then that just hangs onto the place. Nigel Chua himself coming under attack as they sprint down the hill once again. So they are also trying to close on the Porsche, Kevin Chen's car. Kelvin Chen 117 there. You can see just going through. It's another of the many in the Laundry House colours. But it's a long way down the order, this fight. But it is for drivers, interestingly, that have served their pit stop. And there the Audi suddenly slows, does it not? So the Audi 37 slows right down. Drama there. Terry Rayton, in the meantime, Ben made the point quite rightly. He's the leading pit stopper. And as he goes over the timing line now, is pressing on, trying to get up the inside there. Is he going to be able to make a move? Not under braking for the Andretti hairpin. He's not, but he might be able to squirt up the inside coming out of the corner. Yes, Rayton gets his nose in front. Tries to get up and pass Ho. He's on the outside line, down now through turn 3. Has he done it? Yes, he has. That was good, wasn't it? Right round the outside.
Very, very brave. The track is a lot narrower than it looks when you look from the exterior. On board in a car, especially the racing line, is pretty narrow around the faster parts of the circuit. So very good to have found enough grip to do it around the outside there. I was thinking actually that he's in quite a dangerous position because he does have to get through past some slower cars. But in a race like this where you've got so many professional sim races, you won't expect people around you to make so many mistakes. If we were in the real world race, I think I'd be very fearful of being Terry Rayton right now, knowing the traffic around you and what they might or might not do. But I think most of these professional sim races will behave pretty well.
Well, he's gained a place there off the renumbered Bentley of Setien Ho. And further down the order now, this is a car that's going quite strongly, isn't it? Number 15 of Naki Aslam, the Lexus, the Axel sports car, has arrived on the scene in 4th place. Now, like all the leaders, yet to make a stop. The best of those stoppers is 18th at the moment. It's Mironenko in number 7 Honda, Sergei Mironenko. He has made a stop. He was 18th last time over the line, but the leading battle being joined by the Lexus. So great variety up front at the moment as another fight rages on there. Philippa Baquida, number 326, the Laundry House McLaren, run out wide by Ryan Houlihan. The Australian driver fends off Philippa. Also an Australian indeed, but both go wide and Houlihan goes very, very, very wide indeed. He survives it, but will have delayed himself there, Ben.
Well, he's in fact kind of brought the BMW into play as well. They have to hang on the anchors. It's so hard to pick your braking zone at the top of the corkscrew. And for a moment, I thought that Farhan was going to get involved in those two McLarens, but wisely backed out of it. And I think you may have seen some more do or dare dives from our pro racers that come up as our second race of the day today. But that was sensible driving from Farhan as Stanley behind in the Ferrari heads into the pits. And look how busy pit lane is. Some of those drivers are pitting, others are retired out of the race, including, I'm afraid, Andrew O'Hara. I think he did have a disconnect on lap 3 and he hasn't been able to rejoin the server.
Okay, disappointing. But as you say, in then comes the 20-year-old Ferris Stanley, who only took up sim racing a couple of years ago, but he's another member of the expansive Laundry House team. Race leader still is Andrew Lawrenson. Remember, this is a 1-hour race, so we've had a fairly energetic first 12 minutes. He's got the lead gap edging up all the time now to nearly 3.5 seconds. Tubagas Farhan, number 78, you're riding with in his BMW. He is in 13th place now. Onto the power, climbs up the hill under the VP gantry. And then the climb now on towards the corkscrew. Philippa Baquida, in the meantime, having got past Ryan Houlihan up into 11th place, getting away. But you're right about Farhan in that BMW. Whoops, there's been a drama ahead. Aston Martin rejoining. Order shuffles yet again.
So much chaos. Surprised actually that there's so much chaos because usually the sim guys are so consistent and I think just perhaps there's a few guys that are having to deal with slightly crooked cars here. It's not an easy track either to contend with and do your best job, and really the challenge of Laguna Seca, perhaps not necessarily a chosen track for our drivers to compete on, is seemingly causing strife even for our pro sim drivers. So I'm not quite sure how it's going to work out for our real world drivers when we get to that second race. And right, contact.
Ryan Houlihan gets turned around. The BMW is involved in that as well. So that, I'm afraid, is Tubagas Farhan, the Indonesian driver, getting involved in the strife. Meantime, out on track now, have a look at Kin Long Lee, second in the championship he is, with the Waco's Flip Table Racing Mercedes. Some brilliant names in sim racing. And he is coming under attack, isn't he, now? Because really charging on behind is Mia Rose. So this gap has come down and down and down, and Kim Long Lee having a real workout now to hang on to that position. And of course, behind them in 7th place, have a look, Luis Moreno, number 21, with his Nissan. He has got a 5-second penalty.
Yeah, so a lot of these penalties, I'm trying to see in race direction whether we've had any human given penalties, which I don't think we have yet, but a lot of the penalties will be given by the game, generally for track limits. But in this particular track, there's not too many places where you actually can get the game to give you a track limits penalty, generally because you don't make up enough ground by exceeding the track limits. There's a bit of dust and gravel on the exterior of most of the corners, which kind of slows you down, basically. One place where you can benefit is kind of straight lining the corkscrew. So it may be that Moreno lost his braking point at that point in the track, and the game deemed that he made up too much ground by entering back onto the track ahead of where he should have been, and therefore he's been given that 5-second penalty, which he can serve at his pit stop.
Understood. Right, you're riding on board here with Mia Rose. She is in 6th place as the cars now work their way down through the corkscrew, the run then up towards Rainy Curve. That's the fight externally. This is how it looks on board. She's about, half a length back, if that. Closing as they drop down the hill now, out of the Rainy Curve, then into turns 10 and 11, and then hammer up towards the completion of the lap. Mia Rose closes right up there then, so the Aston Martin running in the AM class as well, don't forget. Kin Long Lee is in the pro category. Over the timing line they come, they climb the rise. Is she near enough to make a move down to the Andretti hairpin? Thinks about it, closes, but the line was already covered off. So good defensive driving by Kin Long Lee. He's second in the championship, don't forget, so he could do with banking some points here, while the front runners from Monza in the main have done a bit of self-destruction. Ben, this comes back to what we had in the European Series. Short championship, don't make mistakes, bank points across the races.
And it also proves just how good a job Mia Rose is doing, as she now looks down the inside and makes that one beautifully stick. A little bit of help on the exit of the turn, but that was a decisive move, and really King Long Lee is wise not to fight it too hard, because, as you say, points are better right now, considering Lawrenson has no points in the championship. I'm just checking my notes. And Shirakawa, I think, was another retiree. Mulara, we didn't see in the first round. Aslan, I think he appeared but has no points. So really, the first person that has any points in the championship is in 6th position. And as you say, some points are better than no points, and if he can just hang on to the back of Mia Rose and not lose too many more positions, then he'll be in a good position come the end of the 43 minutes. But Mia's doing a fantastic job. Best of our AM drivers by quite a margin, actually.
I had Maulana as being 4th at Monza, so by my reckoning,
yes.
I'm not saying I'm right, but I reckon he did score, so he's one of the few that is able to have a half-decent result out of both races. So Maulana, and also, as you say, having been second in his class, Kin Long Lee, not second in the race, but second in his class, because it was a race won by Carl Peterson from the AM category. Now, how are our pit stoppers getting on? Quick look down the order. 17th is where you've got Sergei Mironenko. So the Laundry House entered Honda for the Australian, who's an AM. 17th. Now, what are his lap times like? How is he faring? I don't think he's suddenly going to jump into the race lead when the Porsche of Andrew Lawrenson makes a pit stop, but Mironenko certainly does have the potential to gain more ground when those ahead cycle through the regulation stop.
I think the key thing there is that is a pit stop which didn't require any repairs to the car, whereas Terry Rayton, the first of our pit stoppers on that first lap, would have had to, or would have chosen to repair the car after a little bit of contact. It may have been just the tiniest bit of contact, but either way, it's not a massive gap between them. My calculations on that timing screen suggest about 4 seconds between Mironenko and Rayton, but that 4 seconds could easily come down to nothing by the end. 40 minutes still remaining. Mironenko's lapping about half a second slower than Rayton, and Rayton is on pace at the tail of the field. Another man to look out for, actually, really on pace further down, is Relay, the number 44. He's doing great pace. Him and Yat Lam Law behind are really on the pace of the leaders.
Absolutely so. And another one going quite well there, look, is Mercedes number 5, getting class points. This is Charles Teixeira, the Singaporean driver. Now, if you think back to the opening race at Monza, he qualified really well, but then the race unravelled quicker than a ball of wool with a cat playing with it, so he dropped way down the pack. Here he's doing it in reverse. He didn't qualify brilliantly, but he is making progress forward. He's 8th in the pro category in the championship, so he's another one trying to salvage yet more points out of the race, and he's now inching up onto the back of Philippa Boquida in the McLaren there.
Yeah, remember, she was fighting with Houlihan a couple of laps ago, but I think we saw him touched into a half spin, so now he's a couple of places back and not quite in shot there. I thought he might just appear. But Theresa's gaining experience, gaining confidence, and able to then in a moment, perhaps put himself into the top 10 positions.
So Philippa Bokida, one of the two girls in the sim race, the other being Mia Rose, both going strongly, and a place change there. Terry Rayton gets up the inside of the Bentley, so that puts Sek Ian Ho down one spot, puts Rayton up into 18th. And he's now not that far adrift of Mironenko. So of the stoppers, you can subdivide those, can't you? The damaged pit stoppers and the regulation pit stoppers. And Rayton heads the damaged class, as it were, whereas Mironenko heads the regulation one, both from Laundry House. But Rayton is making progress then. We've had the first 20 minutes elapse. Over the timing line goes Rayton, and now up into 18th spot at the expense of the purple Bentley.
Keen to see what kind of lap times he can do now with a bit of clear air. Andrew Lawrenson at the head of the field doing a 1:22.1. Mulana did a 1:21.9 last time through, and every so often you do see 21s coming in. But for the moment, Terry Rayton's only been in the 23s, so with a bit of clear air, it'll be interesting to see if he can get a little bit more pace out of that car. Nobody really, if you do a 21, you're doing a very, very good lap time, but I presume that whether it be first or 20th, you're latched into some kind of traffic, such as the spread of the field and the shortness of the lap.
Yes, I think you're right, and there's going to be more of that, I'm convinced, once people make pit stops and come back in a out of sequence position. As you look at Sai Prithvi, the Indian driver with his McLaren 720S GT3, the IR Esports entered car. Prithvi is in 16th place at the moment. Just up the road ahead is Mika Hakimi, 7th in the championship with his Mercedes, and they're both now starting to come under attack as well as they head up towards the timing line. The Mercedes goes by. This is the climb towards the Andretti hairpin. Prithvi goes through. Mironenko is next, having already made that pit stop, so keep an eye on number 7 as they drop down now into the Andretti hairpin. Up front, it's still Andrew Lawrenson in the lead of the race, and way out wide there, you see how suddenly the pace was compromised.
Yeah, I was about to say that Mironenko really needed to be, he didn't need this traffic because with Terry Rayton breathing down his neck, they potentially are fighting for a very, very good position, and they need to be lapping as fast as possible on every lap, not have traffic, but the traffic made it rather easy for him.
Did indeed, as there over the line goes Andika Maulana, and he is closing. Look on Shirakawa. This is for second and third as they head into the hairpin. So Andika Maulana, remember, who out of the leading group is the most consistent, as in top 4 Monza, top 3 here. And for my money, he's looking a little bit quicker now than Yuki Shirakawa. That Ferrari in second place coming under renewed attack as they sprint now up towards turn 4 through the right, speed building. A little bit of a kink before you then swoop into the next left-hander. This is turn 5 that they approach now on lap number 17. Into it goes Shirakawa, but Andika Maulana started the lap just under 4/10 of a second adrift, and then behind them, also going really impressively, Nakib Aslan with that Lexus RCF. So great variety on display here, Ben, within this leading gaggle of cars.
Yeah, wonderful to have so many different marks of car, and shows what a great job AK Informatica as the race control and our broadcast partner have done to kind of balance the performance these cars and make sure they are all equal. So regardless, they will all feel, and they all do feel, very, very different to drive. But it does seem that the spread of field seems to all be, across a lap, relatively similar in pace. There isn't what we're seeing in some of the other endurance championships on other platforms right now, one car that everybody chooses because it is the best car. Here there seems to be obviously brand loyalties coming into it a little bit, but also just preferences, and having a front engine car or a mid-engine car, they'll feel so different. One of the things that I've felt recently, having spent a bit more time working and driving in this game, is there is a window in which your tyres work at their best. And
okay.
I'm just wondering whether the Ferrari has had a slide, has pushed his tyres a bit too hard, and now is having to back out of it to try and get those temperatures back down into the window so that then he can start increasing his pace again. The pace isn't actually too bad. It's only about 2/10 slower than Andrew Lawrenson at the head of the field. So they are circulating very, very fast, but it does feel as though the Mercedes of Maulana is faster than the Ferrari of Shirakawa, even if the Ferrari, being mid-engine, should kind of use its tyres across all 4 corners much more than the Mercedes, where you tend to overheat the fronts because it's so heavy.
And that window you're talking about, by the sound of it, is the temperature rather than tyre life. So you're not saying, if I understand you correctly, that after 20 or 30 minutes they start to drop off. It's if they get to a given temperature they start to lose their best. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. So the drivers have all of this in front of them. They have all four corners broken up into three different strips. So outside, inside, and middle, and they can see exactly how much they're putting through those tyres. They can see how that is affecting the tyre pressure, and that will then colour in a different way, so that if they've put too much through the front, they start to go red, and then the driver will know to back off, but also will see by the lap times that he's not circulating as fast.
Understood. Right. Shirakawa right now is under real pressure from Andika Maulana behind him. Then you've got the Lexus riding shotgun in the hands of Naqib Azlan. Mia Rose doing a brilliant job in fifth, and she, for the moment, is the leading AM, is she not? So doing a very impressive job right now. Andrew Lawrenson is still the overall race leader. White backgrounds to the numbers are the pros. Red equals AM. Second and third down through the corkscrew. A lot of rubber being laid down on the road there, of course, as the cars now work up towards Rainy Curve. Plunge down the hill then out of turn number 9. Shirakawa looks like he's got the answer for the most part. Meantime, lower down the order, Bank Panatip hanging on for the moment to 8th place. There he goes. But he now is on the back of Luis Moreno, who's already got that 5-second penalty. So Panatip trying to find a way past, but in real terms, he's ahead on corrected times anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. Amazing to have Luis Moreno with us from the Philippines. Such a huge spread of different countries that perhaps aren't even representing global real-world motorsport at all. I did an interview with a Macedonian sim racer on Monday, and I said to him, who is the most famous Macedonian racing driver in the real world? And we were really struggling to think of one. I send you a challenge of the most famous Philippine racing driver. The Thailand, we can tick Alex Albon's box, but Philippines, I'm not so sure.
There was a Philippine driver that did Formula BMW Europe a long time ago, and his name will come to me, but it is not an easy task. You're quite right. Yes, how long have I got? 33 minutes. I'll get back to you on this. Thanks for the challenge, Ben. Another bus will pass to fall under in a moment. Next battle to have a look for here is, as you can see, Hakmi under attack from Mironenko. So this, on the outside line, is the Laundry House Honda. Sergei Mironenko tries to find a way past Mika Hakimi, the Mercedes driver, keeping him at bay, and then Terry Rayton is right there. Actually, looking at the traffic behind him, Mika Hakimi is becoming the cork in the bottle, isn't he?
Well, Mironenko had a 3-second lead just a couple of laps ago on Rayton, and now they're stuck together. So this has been disastrous for Mironenko in a battle that we think will be at least for the top 5. Terry Rayton is a top 5 competitor, so should be right there, depending on how much time they lose in traffic. I think Andrew Lawrenson at the head of the field is having lap after lap of clear road, and his lap times are way faster, even now, than these guys in the middle of the pack. So certainly, when it comes to the pit stoppers, I expect to see Lawrenson with a healthy advantage. These guys need to get into the 122s, clear this traffic, and Mironenko will be very frustrated to have lost the advantage of a damaged Lamborghini that Terry Rayton had to fix. He just can't find a way past that Mercedes right now.
To answer an earlier question, Marlon Stockinger was the one I was thinking of from Formula BMW, but also factor in the late Jose Marcello, who drove in the UK and New Zealand and was sadly killed racing in America. He was another Filipino who got as far as kart, champ car style level. So there's 2 from the Philippines. I'll work on the Macedonians. Meantime, this is at turn 1, and the battle pack dives into the corner. So up now, 1 place, as you've seen, has gone Mironenko. That puts him 15th. Still thinking of AM class points. He's got to be in the top 10 for that. Next target is Farhan, who's a long way up the road. So now, Ben, Mironenko needs to get his head down, doesn't he? And shake off all of that traffic as we approach half distance.
Yeah, knowing that the overtaking point of the track is at turn 1, and he's managed to make space past Hakimi through turn 1, but there was no other space throughout the rest of the lap. And of course the Mercedes might have a slight pace advantage at certain points, but the Lamborghini very fast through that almost flat out left-hander, and has the momentum all the way up the hill. So that's been a very easy pass for Terry Rayton, able to take the racing line into the corkscrew, fly over the brow of the hill. The car goes light there. The wheels start to spin when the ABS kicks in and makes sure the car doesn't spin around. But Rayton now only had to spend half a lap behind the Mercedes, whereas Mironenko had to spend almost 2 or 3.
Indeed so, and these fights are going to rage on as the cars then come now up towards the completion of the lap out of turn 11. Now also Luis Moreno is trying to keep back Tanatip at bay. Tanatip is, if you like, trying to deposit the Lamborghini one place up on the Nissan. So Bank Tanatip goes through. This is the climb up towards the corkscrew. The Nissan goes wide, and this is the Lamborghini's chance. Bank Tanatip tries to level as they come over the brow. Can't do it. 31 in the meantime is Russell Ray's, and he too is looking for position. But Luis Moreno, even with that 5-second penalty, is trying as hard as he can to stay within the top 10. Well, he's going to be, I would think, okay to do that, even though he's yet to make his pit stop. He will drop behind, yep, in he comes now. He will drop behind Tanatip on corrected time, but he gave a really good defence there. Eventually he bails, so he doesn't have to think about the pressure any longer down the pit road. Russell Ray's 20th on the road at the moment, going after 390. Yatlam Law's Waco's flip table BMW. But now, as we get into the second half of the race, more of the leading drivers, Ben, thinking pit stops.
Yeah, curious to see where Luis Moreno comes out. This is a good indication to see exactly where he will come out of the pits. The car didn't look like it had any damage that he'll need to be fixing. He will simply stop. He'll stop for 1 second to fill the car with fuel. He'll then do another 5 seconds of penalty that he has now absorbed. Where does he come out in relation to Mironenko and Rayton? Well, you can look on the left-hand side of the screen. Mironenko and Rayton have already passed, and he might even drop behind Yatlam Law by the time he gets up to speed. Let's have a look.
There he is. So it's a very, very long pit exit as well. Although you can be up to speed, you've got the very tight hairpin on the inside. So a pit stop is a very long pit stop for assorted reasons here. Luis Moreno back on track. Now he's done that penalty, so he doesn't need to think about dropping further down the pecking order. But where will he move up to on these pit stops? Now, in terms of Mironenko, yes, he's getting himself up the order. In terms of time, he is still a long way back, though, from Andrew Lawrenson, the race leader. As long as Andrew doesn't make a mistake, he's looking good. But then again, we thought he was looking good at Monza, and problems intervened. They're going through is 21. Luis Moreno then 9th in class at Monza. And in the red Motul Works livery, he presses on. Ryan Houlihan, in the meantime, late entry for Monza. Good to have him here at Laguna Seca as well. Presses on. He's currently running in 12th overall in the McLaren.
Some maths then. Moreno coming out about, I'd say 16, 17 seconds behind Mironenko. He went into the pits from 7th. And so add 16, 17 seconds up from Tanatip, who is now in 7th position. I reckon that is a battle for the top 5 between Mironenko and Rayton, as our leader, Andrew Lawrenson, now pits. This will give us a much better idea of where those two early stoppers will fall out.
And this now becomes the on-the-road lead battle. So Shirakawa and Maulana go through, still being chased by the Lexus of Naqib Aslan. So there they are, new 1, 2 and 3 as they climb the rise up towards the hairpin at turn 1, the Andretti hairpin. Road starts to drop away, turn downhill here. The Lexus getting closer and closer, actually, to Andika Maulana. So a few laps back, we had Maulana crawling all over the back of Shirakawa. Now he's falling away and having to defend as Andrew Lawrenson slowly makes his way back into the race. Gets to pit out, accelerates away now, and where is that going to put him, Ben? 6th for the moment. Might lose more places, though, as he serves the hairpin on the inside.
It's very, very slow, but actually it's quite a bit shorter. So ultimately, if you're alongside somebody into the braking zone for turn 1, you tend to come out just ahead of them. And so Lawrenson comes out ahead of Bokida, behind Tanatip by 10 seconds. And therefore, quite a way ahead of his teammates Mironenko and Rayton when it comes to... Well, I mean, he had coming into the pits, I think he had about a 10-second advantage anyway. So still on for Mironenko and Rayton in the second half of this race, but Lawrenson now just needs to be careful about those cars that have not pitted that he might have to overtake to keep up his pace.
have a look behind these two. Aslan in the Lexus has had a real drama over the last 3 or 4 corners. He was certainly wide coming out of turn 10. I think he'd lost ground even before that because Maulana, look, has absolutely disappeared from him and has closed right back up onto the tail of Shirakawa. So has Nakib Aslan got a problem? Has he made a mistake or multiple? Because now he's being reeled in by the look of it, lap traffic. Another good fight going on here as the Bentley gets a bit of hit and shoulder and forced out wide. So Yatlam Law gets up the inside of Seki and Ho. The Bentley loses a place down to 18th now.
Thanatip into the pits as well. Remember, he was battling with Moreno before the pit stops, but Moreno would have had to be 5 seconds longer in pit lane for that penalty that he incurred at the start of the race. So expect Thanatip to come out in around this battle, actually. It'll be a bit of traffic for him to contend with when he comes out of the pits, if my maths kind of work out. But of course, these guys, certainly this Bentley, still needs to pit.
Does indeed. 3 wide, that's never going to work, is it? As they come into turn 11, side by side, Yatlam Law in the BMW tries to go around the outside of Mika Hakimi in the Mercedes, and he's done it. Actually, he's got his nose in front, secures the place as they get up towards the timing line. So really good stuff, that. Yatlam Law finding a bit of grip on the outside. On board now in the Bentley. This is Sek Yin Ho's view. In the srfcworld.com, Bentley down the hill out of turn 1, rides the curb, but actually loses a length or 2 as he powers into turn 2 here.
Slightly wide also into turn 2, missing the apex just a little bit, which pushes him onto the curb. He eventually gets back into racing line, which is the curb actually. You want to be turning into turn 3 whilst riding the left wheels over that curb, and many of the corners are the same, because here you do the same thing. Much better line there. You almost want to be apexing where the curb disappears to give you the best speed and pace up this hill. A slight flick left, try not to throw the car in too much to unsettle it too much, but it is incredibly fast, and there is a little bit of forgiveness on the runoff area on the outside, and then of course this horrible braking zone over the brow of the hill, and then throwing yourself back down the hill. A mistake from the Mercedes ahead. Hakimi really struggling here, and again, look, a little bit wide through that, quite fast left-hander also.
Carl Peterson, the Monza winner, remember, was caught up in all of the dramas on the opening lap. He is down in 22nd place overall, so after a great start to the season, it is not so good here. I'll try and work out in a moment where that's going to put him in class, because he should still be on for some points, shouldn't he? 6, 8, just outside the points, I fear, within his class. The order shuffling, though, as more and more are now serving the pit stops, and Andrew Lawrenson has rejoined 6th overall, but ahead of all of the other stoppers. So he's still odds on for a race win. As you look at Baquida, Philippa Baquida doing a great job here, keeping Charles Tessera at bay.
Good news for Carl, or better news for Carl Pedersen, as our winner from the first race, is that Andrew O'Hara will not score points. He is retired out of the race, and to my reckoning, I can't see Fahil Rashmat on our entry list or on our timing screens. I may be wrong, so if you see him, then point him out, but I don't think he's in this race. So actually, Philippa Baquida, who finished in 4th in that first race, would be the next closest challenger. She is 2nd at the moment in the AM race, the AM category, so she will also pick up some decent points, and actually it's a race between her and Terry Rayton, I think, for the lead of that championship by the end.
Fadli Rashmat did enter, number 62, but he's certainly not in the leading 23. Looking at the graphic, you might be able to access more of the timing to ferret about lower down, Ben, but he was certainly on the original entry list.
Yeah, he's down in 33rd position, so he's been heavily compromised by an accident at the start, I think.
Right, if he's 33rd, you are forgiven for not spotting him, I reckon. He's buried there under your desk. So as you see Philippa Baquida go through, the next little battle is Hakimi trying to keep at bay Russell Reyes, who gets himself up past Luis Moreno. But Reyes has still got to come into the pit lane, hasn't he, in the number 31 Audi here. So Hakimi yet to stop, Reyes yet to stop. Moreno has stopped, and it was a longer stop because of his time penalty. Andrew Lawrenson runs 6th on the road. We've got 21 minutes to go, and the Porsche driver still looking as though this is going to turn out to be a good win. Internet connection for Ryan Houlihan looking a bit ropey as Russell Reyes gets up the inside of the Mercedes. Has he got the drive out of the corner, Ben?
Side by side, and there's actually a Nissan trying to play as well. This is a very difficult place to overtake because it's so fast, but just about manages to do it because of the compromised momentum. The Nissan is now going to have a nice drag down the inside and take 2 spots into the corkscrew and gets the car stopped as well, but a huge queue of cars behind.
So the field battles on here. Downhill, Russell Ray's up the curb. Whoops! Contact with Hakimi. Braves it out down the hill, and the Audi comes out ahead, but the inside line for the next corner will be Mika Hakimi, who brakes late. He's up the curb, comes out ahead. Russell Ray's runs wide. There's Carl Peterson in the background trying to get in on the act as well. The other Audi there, look, as well, is sort of Henrina Ralahay trying to go through, so it's all shuffling around as they come up over the line. Carl Peterson is 19th on the road, should get a bit more out of all of this. Russell Ray's then, very energetic driving. In the end, it all unravels. He's back down to 18th, and he's about to get jumped, I fear, by Carl Peterson, who has a look to the inside there, up to turn 3. No way by, though.
No, difficult place to overtake there. There's not really the braking zone, and it's kind of turning and braking at the same time. I really think that Mika Hakimi, who was pretty fast in our first race, may have picked up some damage in perhaps in the first lap or in the first couple of laps and chosen not to pit and is now hobbling around in that Mercedes. And of course, if you've damaged the car in some way, you may have bent the suspension, which in turn is going to overheat the tyres and is in turn going to make life more difficult. And the Ferrari's lost a couple of spots as well. A mistake from Shirakawa on that last lap.
Absolutely right, but he has made his pit stop, I think, has he not? Because he's now
shown
as being green, and also Andika Maulana in. So it's the same order of the stoppers, Lawrenson, Shirakawa and Maulana. So they were nose to tail before, they're nose to tail after the stops, but Maulana all of a sudden, Ben, looks like he's got a bit more pace.
Yeah, so that was what I was seeing, was them actually just exiting pit lane offline and with a slow lap time because they've been into the pits. But only 3.5 seconds back from Lawrenson. I wonder if he's had some traffic to contend with, because remember before the pit stop, that gap was nearly 10 seconds, but now the Ferrari relatively within shooting distance and being pushed hard by Maulana. The pace of those two, very, very good.
They could do with working together, couldn't they, in a sense here?
Yeah.
Don't just squabble over second, go after that race-leading car. Coming up now out of turn 11 over the timing line. Behind them on the road, got a lapped car. So the leaders go through. That's the Bentley, I think. So you've got now into the pits Mia Rose out of 6th place. Andika Maulana comes up to the outside line. Can't go through round the hairpin. Turns 1 and 2 down to 3 now. That right-hander. And let's see, the gap was 3.3 seconds last sector timing point. It's gone up 4 seconds. Now, look, Shirakawa is having to go defensive, and that's costing him time. His race relative to the Laundry House Porsche is unravelling because he's got to go defensive. Now, were Maulana to get past, could he go after the leader?
Certainly has the pace and has had the pace for the last good 15 minutes or so, I think, because he's been constantly hassling that Ferrari. The Ferrari just not seemingly having the pace. It's a car that we've seen across the Asian and the European season that looks after its tyres well, doesn't use the tyres perhaps to their maximum, and therefore you don't necessarily have the grip that you might have in other models, but you do have the longevity, and so you don't lose as much time by the end of the race. These guys, though, this pace actually is incredibly fast, despite the fact that they're fighting. Come to the end of the lap now, of course, their last lap would have been slow because of the pit stop and because of the exit to pit lane. This looks like good slipstream. Is there going to be space for Maulana on the inside? No, he's chosen to go to the outside and force the Ferrari into a compromised line, but I'm sure it's not going to work.
Ferrari fends him off, so Yuki Shirakawa keeps Andika Maulana behind as they drop down the hill then. We are now looking at 31 laps in the book. We've got 16.5 minutes of our sim race to go. Remember, the pros have their 1 hour competition still to come from Laguna Seca, but the leading gap has doubled, hasn't it now? Look, because, has almost doubled. We're up to 4.5 seconds between Lawrenson and Shirakawa, and then Maulana still runs third, so the top 3 stoppers remain in the same order. The leading car on the road yet to stop is the Lexus of Naqib Aslam. There, wide again goes Yuki Shirakawa. Certain parts of the circuit, the Ferrari edges away by a length or so. Others, the grunt and go front engine Mercedes claws back the lost time. They drop down through the corkscrew. All of that rubber put down on the road now. Track surface colour changing as the race wears on.
Curious to see if Lawrenson is in a bit of traffic right now, because Shirakawa's pace on this particular lap and Marlana is better than Lawrenson. And it has been for the last couple of laps. So maybe Lawrenson's found himself in a bit of traffic, and it will be lappery because there's only 2 cars ahead of him on the road now. We've nearly cleared all of our pit stops for our leading contenders, but certainly an issue for Lawrenson on that last lap. Actually, no, as they come across the line, 22.5 plays a 22.7. So actually Shirakawa losing a bit of time at the end of the lap, but timing screens kind of suggesting that Lawrenson was struggling on that last lap.
It might be Shirakawa to struggle soon, mightn't it? Because look what's happening up the road. There is a back marker. Andrew Lawrenson, there he is, has just cleared 2 slower cars, and they will need to be negotiated by Shirakawa and Adika Marlana before too much longer. So we've got just under a quarter of an hour of the race to go. Andrew Lawrenson, you've got to take your hat off to him because he dominated this race. It was a good start, good qualifying, and as we said before the race started, qualify well, you get ahead of all of the dramas, and that's exactly what happened at turn 1, but he made the best of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Solid driving. Actually, as we saw for the most part in Monza, he was unlucky to get caught up in accidents, but qualified well and qualified even better here. And because he was at the front, he stayed away from the issues. Remember, Joseph De Jesus was actually, I think, qualified 4th or 5th. So he was only the 3rd row and spun in the middle of the road at turn 2. So everyone behind him got caught up in some way, whether it be with contact or whether taking evasive action. And that was, after turn 2, Lawrenson's race to lose, really, because all he needed to do is keep the car on the road.
Absolutely right, and he needs to do so for another 14 minutes, another, what's that going to be, 10 laps or so. Here is Charles Teixeira going over the line, still chasing after Philippa Boquida. She has yet to stop, so has Teixeira. Mia Rose is behind, so right now Boquida is the leading AM ahead of Mia Rose, but that is because she has yet to serve the regulation pit stop, so we need that to flick over, I think, in the second part, or the final part, once Australian driver Philippa Boquida, another of the Laundry House squad, has served the regulation pit stop. So the order is still a slightly false one, with some drivers not having made their pit stops. Of course, there's no window you need to stop within. You just do it when you need to, when you feel you want to.
Now, as you well know, David, we got sent a document from Matthew Marsh, who's been helping out the Laundry House team to give a bit more information on their drivers, and very, very helpful. Thank you very much to Matthew for that. I'm sure you've read it entirely and have a question about the butt kickers that Andrew Lawrenson is running. Any ideas what a butt kicker might be, David?
I'd love to pretend I did know, but sadly not. Explain, please.
So a butt kicker is fitted to the bottom of your seat, and it gives you a bit more feedback because it's basically force feedback for your seat. You have force feedback through the steering wheel, and sometimes you might even get a little bit of force feedback through the pedal system. There'll be a little vibrator on the pedals if you're doing something wrong, like locking a wheel. But very few people run any kind of force feedback and movement in the seat. It's just too expensive. But he's running a butt kicker, so that means that if the rear end steps out, he will have that set up to give him a bit of in the seat feedback, which very interesting setup from him, and will be helping him surely, especially when he goes over the brow at the corkscrew and the car goes light. He'll be able to feel through his bottom that it's going light, rather than visually having to comprehend that and then do something about it. So a little bit more like a real car.
Amazing, isn't it, how even sim racing continues to evolve. Here you've got Russell Reyes diving up the inside of Mika Hakimi. These two have yet to stop. Russell Reyes actually nailed that quite nicely. I was fearful he was going to run out wide, so that should put him 16th as they come across the timing line. Yes, it does. We've got 11 and a half minutes on the clock, but Mika Hakimi comes back at him to the outside line there, can't find a way through. The Malaysian driver drops into turn 1 and 2, that very long hairpin, and there's contact. Whoops, Reyes gets sideways. Hakimi knocks him back into line, and Carl Peterson is going to gain a couple of places out of all of that. And suddenly, Russell Reyes and Mika Hakimi watch all of this traffic come streaming past them.
It was going to happen at some point, wasn't it? Because the two of them still needed to pit, so they were going to fall way behind by the end of the race anyway. They provided a great roadblock for us for entertainment purposes over the last 15 minutes. But now they are all free, and Pedersen can get his head down. He'll have a nice clear track ahead of him and get some big laps in. But ultimately, it's still going to be tricky for him to score points out of this one with so much lost time at the start of the race.
And also going strongly, Ryan Adisaputra with another of the Aston Martins. This is the corkscrew. You can see there are cars everywhere at the moment. Wonderful overhead shot that as they drop downhill, now go towards Rainey Curve, not because it's raining, but named after Wayne Rainey, the great 500cc motorcycle champion, and plunge down the hill once more. 10 minutes on the clock then, and Philippa Baquida being reeled in by Mia Rose, and remember, she's yet to serve her regulation pit stop, so the AM class lead is imminently going to change. Andrew Lawrenson continues to dominate up front. Battle rages on as over the timing line also goes Isaac Norman with the Nissan. As Ben made the point earlier on, lots of variety on this grid, good to see. Having been punted sideways, Mika Hakimi now comes to the pit lane, but he's lost a lot of ground and he's losing further time on this lap while he's in the pits.
Yeah, I think if I was him, I would have been in the pits quite a lot earlier. Yes, great to have a big queue of cars behind you, but if you have to pit and you know that you're going to be releasing those guys at some point, there really isn't much point in backing them up for so long, especially with a car that just didn't look like it was running well. I really think that he was carrying some kind of an issue and now plummets to the tail end of the field, having now ticked off that pit stop. Here's Terry Rayton. Remember, he was pitted on lap 1 with his little issue, and now, as we kind of predicted, is into the battle with Thandip and Moreno and Law behind. So he actually split that battle when the pit stops were done by Thandip and Moreno.
Bank Tanatip then in the Lamborghini number 22 ahead of the similar car, but in the Laundry House colours, the Miami blue. There it is. So Terry Rayton pressing on, wanting to find a way past Bank Tanatip. They both pitted, so they can run to the end of the race now. They don't have to serve a pit stop. So Tanatip down towards the approach of the corkscrew. Way out wide there goes Terry Rayton. That might cost him a length. Let's see. There's also some traffic up the road ahead. One of the cars they need to think about is the McLaren of Ryan Houlihan, and they're closing on him. So this is 8th, 9th and 10th. They get past the back marker, but Ryan Houlihan is going to have to look to his laurels pretty soon, because the interest rate, as it were, from Bank Tanatip is about to go up, isn't it? He's going to be very interested in getting up into 8th place.
Oh, I've missed your puns. It's been a while since
Not
we
much
had a
you
pun
have.
from you. Kinlon Lee has just come out of the pit lane, having made that his compulsory pit stop. Wondered if he would fall into that little battle between the two girls, between Philippa and Mia. And by the looks of the timing screen, I think he has. So he's got his hands full again with Mia Rose to try and keep her behind. Ultimately, not a big problem. In fact, yes, as the timing screen corrects itself, those two go ahead. They are battling for different points because Kinlon Ling is a pro and Mia is the leading AM once Philippa goes into the pits. But that should be a little entertaining battle rejoined, because they were locked together before the pit stops as well.
Yeah, so Mia Rose heading for a class win. On the road, it is Nakib Aslan who leads, but has yet to serve his stop. Andrew Lawrenson, second on the road, is the best of the stoppers ahead still of Yuki Shirakawa and Andika Maulana. You're looking, or were looking, at the battle for 8th, 9th, 10th. Houlihan, Tanatip, Rayton. Through go the second and third of the stoppers. In other words, there Shirakawa, there Andika Maulana. Philippa Baquida running 5th on the road. Still yet to serve the pit stop as downhill drops Andika Maulana.
It's a shame, actually, because her pace was really good at the start, but it does look like that McLaren hasn't really survived this long stint. And, of course, all of the teams and drivers will now be feeling the lack of grip in the tyres. There was not a real issue with tyre life throughout this race, but they're never going to be as good as the fresh tyres that you put on at the start of the race. It's never going to be good enough to change the tyres. You're never going to make up enough ground by having new tyres. I mean, look at Andrew Lawrenson's pace, still managing to do late 22s, and a late 21 was the ultimate lap time, but ultimately you couldn't really do that lap after lap. So no point changing the tyres, but I don't think the McLaren of Bakida is treating the tyres particularly well, and so she is definitely struggling. And once she pits, she's going to be way down the order.
It's interesting, isn't it, that some drivers leave it right to the very end like this. Maybe in the fullness of time we'll be able to get a better handle on why people choose to do it the way they do. For me, I would do it early and almost get it out of the way, or if you run in traffic, get it out of the way, get it done. But the purpose of leaving it right to the very end, like Philippa Baquida is doing, it's slightly more curious, I think, because finally now she does come in, but she's got no time left really now in which to gain any places back, has she? Because we're almost at the end of the race.
And of course, by sitting in the pits and not changing your tyres, if you are having an issue with tyre temperatures, they will cool a little bit by sitting in the pit lane. Your brakes will overheat, but your tyres will slightly cool. So if you are, as I was speaking a little bit earlier, in that window where, or out of that window where your tyres have kind of over-pressured, overheated, then sitting in the pits could be a solution for you. And, you know, looking at the performance of Philippa over those last 5 or 6 laps, she wasn't in the rhythm. She wasn't running at the pace that she had been doing earlier on. And so you're right, David, I would have kind of used the pit stop as a kind of a reset, a breather. It is the opportunity also, of course, for these drivers to grab a bit of water and have a drink, because amazingly, there is so much physicality going in and concentration going into these 1 hour races. It is physically not so much, but mentally probably more tiring than if this was a real race.
It's one of the things that I learned during lockdown when I interviewed Ben Barnicoat for the Pit Lane, the SRO podcast that we were doing, was what the drivers are doing on the sim in terms of what they wear and how they adapt for it. And you know, Ben said it's racing boots, might wear my gloves, team t-shirt, certainly don't wear my overalls, but he said what I have invested in are some blue glasses to keep the glare down, because you're focused on this really bright, really big screen for an hour, and it starts to hurt your eyes. So blue glasses to reduce the glare was something that he had, and I suspect others have as well. Now, we might yet get a change here for second place, because Maulana, with under 4 minutes to go, is having the last roll of the dice, isn't he? And he's right on the back of the Ferrari.
You'd hope so, wouldn't you? Because he's been on the back of the Ferrari for such a long time, and you get the feeling that he has much better pace in that Mercedes than Shirakawa in the Ferrari. But so far, before and after the pit stops, he just hasn't managed to make it happen. And this is, of course, the battle for the 2 remaining podium spots, with Lawrenson now 5 seconds up the road. Had Maulana got ahead a little bit earlier on, I feel like he maybe could have put Lawrenson under a bit of pressure, especially directly after the pit stops when Lawrenson lost so much time. But ultimately, there's not enough time now for him to make any difference on the lead, but he can pick up a couple of extra points if he can get ahead of the Ferrari, which seems to be stronger at points than the Mercedes. But then other times when we join the pictures, they're locked together.
Yeah, it makes one wonder whether it's down to the cars or down to the drivers, doesn't it? Because they certainly can run nose to tail, but yet the gap on occasions has looked rather elasticated. So is that Maulana making the odd error? Is it that he gets stuck behind the Ferrari, has to drop back, let everything cool down and try again? We might find out post-race, but right now he's running out of time. He's also running out of ideas, I think, because Yuki Shirakawa has proved that he can drive a wide Ferrari, and he's hanging on to that second place.
Yeah, that Ferrari is strong where it needs to be strong. It's strong up the hill, it's strong into turn 1. Under braking, it didn't look very strong, but it had enough of an advantage going into the turn now this is, look, they're very, very close here, but coming out of the corner, the Ferrari does seem to just stretch its legs a little bit. This time the Mercedes has kind of kept close, but can't jam it down the inside of the corkscrew. He really just needs to focus on being as close as possible out of the last turn and trying to get the traction down so that into turn 1 he can then get it hard on the brakes where he definitely is better.
So let's see as they come into turn 11 then. There's a minute and 3/4 still to go. Andrew Lawrenson might squeeze an extra lap out of this at the end of the lap, but now look, finally Maulana is going to commit. Yes, to the outside line. This is the first real chance we've seen him have. He got the outside line into turn 1. He's never going to go around the outside there. He needs to get the switchback if he can, but that is covered off by Shirakawa, and Maulana comes out of the corner a further length back. It was a good idea, but the nature of the road, the topography of the circuit is going to go against him. He needed the inside line there, look, going up to turn 4. And Shirakawa knew, Ben, exactly what was coming and got that door closed and locked and bolted plenty in advance.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all now. It's not necessarily about the pace that these two drivers have. It is about racecraft, and Shirakawa doing a great job where he needs to, and almost Maulana just needs to really start thinking hard about how to force Shirakawa into a mistake or force him off the ultimate line, because Shirakawa doing a great job at just making sure he's fast and he's covering the line. But that was a little bit on the edge going through the corkscrew. The Ferrari bobbing up and down as though he just took a fraction too much curb and a slide through Rainey as well. He's under pressure. He's feeling it. 30 seconds remain. Andrew Lawrenson is now on his last lap.
Okay, so the race leader starts the last lap of round 2 of the GT World Challenge Asia Esports Championship presented by Tarmac Works, and it is Andrew Lawrenson who gets a hat tip for this. He's absolutely dominated the race there into the turn 1, into turn 2 hairpin. The Andretti hairpin goes for second place. Yuki Shirakawa and Dika Maulana behind as they drop now down once again into turn 3. Maulana has tried and tried and tried, and he's just going to come up short. But again, look, the Mercedes is quick. It's right there on the back of the Ferrari. He thinks about having a go, but Shirakawa's defence has been really impressive, Ben. He's not put a wheel wrong under pressure, really, for an hour.
No, but he's really struggling with the rear end of that Ferrari. You can see it moving around. He's not able to get on the power. He's not able to get away from the Mercedes, and that was why, through turn 2, the Mercedes closed in so quickly. Here's another traction area you need to be careful with. The traction control on that Ferrari probably turned down to as little as possible, and the rear end moving around. Here was where he made that little error last time. This time he covers it off, and the next opportunity is the last corner, so I think he's done enough.
So Maulana running out of corners, running out of time. It's going to be a dive up the inside if he's lucky, if he can. In the meantime, though, Andrew Lawrenson is heading for a race win for Laundry House, for Porsche. Andrew Lawrenson comes across the line to win, the Australian driver victorious at Laguna Seca. Second is Yuki Shirakawa. You've got to say he deserves that, the way that he has defended race long. Yuki Shirakawa finishing in second place, the Japanese driver. Third, Andika Maulana. And what about fourth? It's going to be Nakib Aslam in the Lexus, seemingly. Fifth, Mia Rose on target to win the AM class. Brilliant for Mia Rose, that. And sixth is going to be Kinlong Lee. Terry Rayton here, Ben, pressing on for seventh place. That's a good recovery after his travails on lap 1.
Yeah, a long little queue, and in fact managed to clear Mironenko by a couple of cars in the end. This was a little battle that was going on right to the end, and Kinlong Lee holding on from Rayton, and then Bank, Thanatip and Mirenko. So a really entertaining battle for the last couple of positions. Just a few more cars to get over the line. Philippa Bakida is going to finish fourth in the AM category. Mia Rose, female racer, winning that category. Great job ahead of Terry Rayton, Mironenko. Those two were the early pitters. And then Philippa Bakida in fourth, with Ryan Houlihan taking points for fifth.
So if you go to the pro class, Andika Maulana fourth at Monza and third here, the most consistent. These the provisional race results. Andrew Lawrenson ahead of Yuki Shirakawa, Andika Maulana third, Nakib Aslan fourth, Mia Rose fifth, and winning the AM class ahead of Kinlong Lee in sixth place. Right then, an excellent race and plenty to keep us talking and watching all of that. Paul, I think you enjoyed it as well, because we had some great battles all the way through the field, apart from for the race lead, where Andrew Lawrenson just checked out right at the start, didn't he?
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you very much, David. Brilliant racing. Thoroughly enjoyed that. At the edge of my seat. And we had, just as we expected, a little bit of drama. Okay, Ben, maybe a lot of drama at the start of the race. But after everybody settled down, the track action was brilliant. Lawrenson, perfect performance, dominated at the front of the field. And for me, Ben Constanduras, the fight for P2, Shirakawa, as David said in the live comms, did not put a wheel wrong in that 488 GT3 Ferrari. Brilliant driving from both of those drivers, actually, for the podium positions.
Yeah, it felt to me as though Shirakawa was struggling with traction. He definitely didn't have the Ferrari underneath him like perhaps he would have done at the start of the race. And just was able to really, as I said, it wasn't down to pace by the end. It was down to racecraft, placing the car in the right place, doing the right things at the right time on track, and covering Maulana. I think, for me, had Maulana managed to pass him in the first stint, he could have challenged Lawrenson for the win, but ultimately just couldn't find a way past. And that's the beauty of racing. It's sometimes, well, you don't see it in Formula One, but it's not just about flat-out lap times. It is also about racecraft as well.
Yeah, exactly. Many different permutations of things that could happen in the race, but in the end, it was Lawrenson at the head of the field that won the first race of the day today in the GT World Challenge Asia, presented by Tarmac Works. That was our Pro and Am, sim racers taking part in their event, and we've still got, so stay tuned, everybody at home, the Pro and Am real world drivers to take to the track for their 60-minute event. But before we get to that point, Ben, I just want to say a massive congratulations to our female racers taking part in this event. Mia Rose in a fantastic 5th position and the first of the Am drivers, and Philippa Bakida as well. Great drive, unfortunately just slipped out of the overall top 10 in 11th at the checkered flag, but both of our lady racers performing exceptionally well and providing some great entertainment out on the track.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's so much focus and so much talk about female drivers across motorsport as a whole. And it's so fantastic to see them represented in sim racing. And, there's some very, very good female races over in Australia across the different platforms. Emily Jones, for instance, does the V8 Supercar Series esports events. And it's fantastic to have a big, solid group of female racers coming across from Australia. And hopefully they can fly the flag not only in the Asian races that we've got on the world scene. Mia, that is incredibly good. Yes, she won the AMS, but actually what impresses me most is her performance across the whole field, across the overall result, and beating so many pro drivers.
Yeah, absolutely right. And once again, we saw strategy play a part. Again, I believe yourself and David spoke about it during the broadcast, where Bakida held on much, much later into the race than some of the other drivers. I was fascinated to see how Terry Rayton, who got involved in that early incident in the race and then came down pit road a little bit earlier than maybe some of his rivals, to see how he worked his way through the traffic and how such a variance of strategy plays out over the course of a 60-minute race. Do you stop early? Do you try and work your way through the field? Or do you hang on and risk those tyres falling off? And again, Ben, we've seen very different strategic decisions made by the drivers. And we're now on our third race, our second event, our third race of the season proper. Have you got a feeling as to what is the optimal strategy for a driver to take in these sort of scenarios?
As you well know, Paul, you're more of an expert in ACC than I am. There is not the ultimate strategy for the race format that we have. There are different strategies for the different tracks, the different weather conditions, and the different cars. And obviously, we raced, I don't think we've mentioned it, but we raced early morning in Laguna Seca. Temperatures were kind, and therefore there was never going to be a need to change tyres. Yes, the tyres were not ultimately operating at their ultimate throughout the whole race, but they lasted. There was no massive drop-off. As we get through the rest of the season, depending on the track temperature, depending on the conditions that we experience, and depending on the tracks we go to, because of course that 5th round, we don't even know where we're going yet, then we'll see perhaps the need to change tyres or the strategic option to change tyres. But today it was never a need. It was just tick that box of going into the pits. And of course, because of that big first lap accident, so many people running with damage, getting into the pits early was a very, very important thing to do for, I think, 15 cars in that first lap?
Yeah, very, very popular was pit lane at the start of the race. And I just want to take you back to the start of that race again for a moment, if I can. We saw a significant number of cars involved in accidents. They're making contact, some people facing the wrong direction. And these are all reasonably experienced racers. They've put in a lot of time, a lot of practice. Why do we see these sorts of contacts on an opening lap? Is it over-exuberance from the drivers? Is it the inability to be able to see clearly around you compared to the real world? Why is that?
Didn't see a replay of exactly what happened to De very easy going into turn one, of course, with cold tyres to slightly outbrake yourself effectively, and the rear end just not sticking and so are rotating. That was one possibility. The other possibility, of course, with however many 40 that we had going into turn one, that there was inevitably going to be a little bit of contact, and it's the lightest of contact, as you well know, that turns these cars around. So as soon as he was parked in the middle of between turns 1 and 2 there was nowhere for anybody else to go. So many barreling into the side of him, and so many also avoiding action. We were lucky actually to have only 1 or 2 that fully retired out of the race. We could have had so many more.
But once things did settle down and the drivers got into their rhythm and people started to find a feel and a vibe of the car and the track and the conditions and their rivals, we saw some incredible racing. You'll have to excuse that I've forgotten the name of the drivers now, but towards the end of that race, we almost had 3 wide into the corkscrew, which is something you very rarely see successfully achieved. And the skill that these drivers are showing out on the circuit to race in such close proximity to each other, passing, trading paint, bumping door to door. It's phenomenal to see, isn't it? Especially with it being the Asia region as well, which is the first time really they've had such a high profile championship like this.
Yeah, actually, it's very interesting that Laguna provides so much great action, because the layout itself on a piece of paper doesn't look that particularly special, but because it's so kind of medium to high speed, it's really hard to get every apex and every corner bang on every lap. And so even our sim world drivers struggle with Laguna Seca. I'm so excited / apprehensive to see how we get on with our real world drivers coming up in a few moments.
Yeah, that's right. And while we speak of real-world drivers, let's have a look at the entry list of who is going to be taking part in this second race. There are names many people will recognise from the last round and also from real-world racing. There's pro and amateur drivers. We've got there Matthew Marsh, Alex Young with Formula One experience as well. Of course, we've seen these drivers are adapting to the world of virtual motorsport. Darrell O'Young there, you see this driving in the World Touring Car Championship and an array of GT racing series as well. But this is a new thing for them. This is driving in a virtual space. We've already talked about how technical and challenging and short the Laguna Seca racetrack is. And when you've got 45 GT3 specification cars on track with drivers with varying levels of experience in this kind of environment, as you say, Ben, it's exciting, but at the same time a little bit nerve-wracking as well. And compared to our sim drivers that we've just watched, do you think the real-world pros are going to affect a different strategy than their sim experienced counterparts, or is it just a case of tackle whatever's in front of you and see how it goes?
No, what we do know is there's so much more of a marriage now between the real world teams and the sim teams. And so I'm sure that even the guys that we've just seen racing will be helping out our real world drivers. The teams such as Laundry House, the teams such as Craft Bamboo, Tarmac Motorsports, they'll be helping each other out, and they'll be spotting and they'll be deciding on strategy. But so I expect the driving to be a little bit different, but in terms of strategy, I think they'll have it nailed, and there'll be a lot of help coming from both sides, because it's lovely over the course of this year to see how the real world of motorsport has embraced the sim racing world, and how they've been helping each other throughout the whole of our lockdown period at the start of the year, and now as the real world starts to open up again.
I think that is a tremendous point there, Ben. Virtual motor racing, sim racing, esport, call it whatever you will at home, is continuing to grow in number, grow in strength. We've got 45 cars lining up on the grid with real-world drivers taking part in this championship. It's fantastic to see, and I'm thoroughly excited to see how it goes. And actually, speaking of which, let's have a look at the starting grid for this next race in the GT World Challenge Asia Esports Series, presented by Tarmac Works and the Real World Drivers. So the starting grid, as you can see, again, Ben, we've got a lovely mix of manufacturers involved in this one, just going to show that no one car is the standout performance so far.
No, and I think more of these drivers will have brand partnerships in the real world that they'll want to replicate in the virtual world. So we'll see more people having to choose certain cars. But ultimately, again, it's credit to the guys that are putting the whole competition together, that all of these cars here around this track seemingly are competitive. It's not like we saw perhaps in Asia, where the McLaren was the better car to have at one track, the Mercedes was the better car to have at another track. It is very much open. Mercedes still look good because we've got a good few cars at the head of the field there, including Borg, who's taken pole position.
And interestingly, Paddy, you'll have noticed, lines up in 9th place on the grid. So he's on the 5th row of the grid. And he was a winner last time out. So he's a driver that absolutely needs to work his way through the field. We've seen already that 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th position down is the danger zone for that T1. And Paddy, what will he do in this race, do you think, Ben? Is it going to be a case of attack and try and make positions as early as possible? Or is he going to be looking into Andretti and into Sector 1 at least to try and stay out of trouble? Because as you mentioned in the comms, you have an accident, you acquire some damage on your car. That's a significant amount of time down pit road, and it's very, very easy to drop a lap in the very early stages, and that's your weekend out of the water straight away.
I think there'll be drivers that will be running with damage in this race. I really don't think that there'll be very few that will be clean. It's going to be brutal. It's going to be so difficult to nail a clean race. And yeah, ultimately, I think keeping out of trouble for somebody like Paddy is going to be so crucial. David said it before in the other race. We need to score points in every single one of these races, even if it is the tail end of the top 10 in one race and the top step on another race, because there is so much chaos in all of these races. Staying out of trouble, keeping clean is probably the more key than trying to knock in and bang in the qualifying laps across the 1 hour.
Yeah, and of course, it's like everything. It's like Andy Priaulx made famous in World Touring Cars. Consistency, points, scoring is what matters in a championship situation. And to clarify to everybody at home, by the way, first and foremost, folks at home, thank you so much for joining us in this broadcast. It's great to have you with us. Do leave a comment in the chat of the race broadcast. It'd be great to hear from you all. We've seen the Pro and the Am Sim racing drivers. We have got another 60-minute race upcoming, but this time it's the real world drivers taking it to the virtual track. 60 minutes, there is a pit stop. We are the SRO GT World Challenge Esports Asia Series, presented by Tarmac Works. We are delighted to be in the Asia region for this championship, and we're going to go to the track and have a look at the real world drivers in action for this, their second race of the GT World Challenge Asia Championship, powered by Tarmac Works.
Paul, thanks very much. We are set then to go racing in the real entry. Now, the drivers getting themselves set for another hour with the mandatory pit stop. There's no window to it. You do it when you want, either early, get it out of the way, or if you're in traffic, bail, try and buy yourself some clear track space. We saw in the sim race that lots of drivers were doing it some drivers were doing it towards the very end, which might not be ideal, but we'll see how people treat this. The man on pole position is Aaron Borg. He lines up then in number 4, starting the SRT Team Sydney Mercedes from pole with alongside Evan Chen, who won his class in the Lamborghini Super Trofeo World Finals last year. The second row, the Angs, Freddie, number 98, and alongside is Dominic Ang. Row 3, Matt Solomon, lining up number 36 with his Mercedes. Melvin Moes alongside another of the Mercedes for Craft Bamboo Racing, ahead of Tenku Lei in number 213. His BMW alongside Antares Al, the Modena Motorsports Porsche, as you look there at number 3, Dominic Ang going through. The very excitingly coloured Viper racing car, the Malaysian, carrying on with the grid, as Paul mentioned, the championship leader of the race, one winner from the Nevishan Padiachi, a long way back on this grid. Starts 9th on the 5th row alongside Alex Al. Then you've got James Russell and Kevin Say, with Matthew Marsh on the grid alongside Alistair Young, Kang Ling and Adam Lee Fong, both experienced on the 3 racers. Now GT racers share the next row ahead of late entry Aaron Lim and Sean Tong alongside of him.
plenty of action as the drivers try and warm up their tyres and get as much temperature into everything as possible. I've seen actually from 8th position, Au has had a spin on this warm-up lap, so not necessarily what you want to be doing before the start of the race. He'll try and get himself back into track position. Remember, at the start of this race, drivers are given boxes in which they need to stay in. They see those virtually on their screens. If they exceed those boxes, whether it be behind or in front, then they automatically get a drive-through penalty. So look out for, on the timing screens on the left-hand side, a little red dot saying DT, and that will signify if they have done something wrong at the start of this race. The front few rows of the grid lining up very, very early. They're still got to get round that last corner, and they are being very well behaved.
So you've got the cars.
Unlike our sim guys that only just about got themselves sorted at the line. Right then, cars coming to the line. Dominic Ang in 4th position. Aaron Borg, Evan Chen, Freddie Ang on the front 3 rows, and off we go. And it's the braking zone down into turn 1, which is the crucial, and the Mercedes already with a slight advantage into there. Oh, but he gets biffed. He gets biffed by the Porsche. Was that Evan Chen that turned him around? And luckily, he's off the track this time. Such was the biff that most people can get past without causing issue. But on the exit, there's a couple more flying off into the barriers as well, David.
Yeah, one of them, I think, was Dominic Ang in the Porsche from the second row that headbutted the spinning cars. So, yes, it's all kicked off right from the very start, hasn't it, as we rather feared. Not quite as bad as the sim race, but bad enough for those that had qualified well. So, strangely, being at the pointy end of the grid wasn't an advantage to be able to drive away from the traffic. Far from it. It's people at the front getting themselves in strife, spinning, and then being the roadblock for the traffic behind. There was one car I noticed, Ben, that didn't even get into the race. Looked like there was a Porsche in the pit lane at the very start. One limping on there as number 7, Melvin Moe, climbs the hill. Works another spin. Who was that going around? There is mayhem on this, the opening lap, all the way around the lap as Evan Chen leads the way, but there might be a little bit of an investigation into exactly what kicked off at the first corner and how that might ultimately shape the outcome of the race and the result thereafter.
Yeah, we did have a couple of drive-through penalties handed out in race 1 by our race direction team, so it's very possible to have that in this race as well, considering that Evan Chen has now a healthy advantage in a laundry house liveried Porsche, deja vu from the last race we had, but ultimately he's going to be carrying some damage for sure, and he's going to be carrying the guilt of pummeling the Mercedes into the first corner. Had a good start, but I think for me, Borg just hung on the brakes just a little bit too much into turn 1, slowed the car too much to hold the inside line. The idea was to cover the inside and make sure nobody threw themselves up the inside, but ultimately it meant that Chen was, all locked up and straight into the tail.
Yeah, the other thing that Evan Chen is going to carry, I would think, is this Damocletian investigation, surely, that will come to see whether he has a case to answer in that first corner, and it could well be that Mr. and Mrs. Drive get together with Mr. and Mrs. Through and end up, well, in fact, it's going to be a stop-go. 2 different families, the stops and the goes have merged. So a stop-go 10-second penalty going Evan Chen's way for his part in that first corner drama. So now we're looking really at Matt Solomon ahead of James Russell, with Matthew Marsh going great guns in 4th place as they come out of the corkscrew up towards the completion of lap number 2. So Matthew Marsh there, gaining ground all the time. The 52-year-old who says that sim racing is for the teenagers. Matthew adapting really nicely. He's about to get into 3rd place once Chen serves his stop-go.
Yeah, I think we've got plenty of more gentlemanly drivers in this one, isn't there?
Yeah, exactly. There was one car that I don't think started, which looked like a Porsche stranded in the pits. But, Ben, you might be able to unravel exactly who we've lost from all that carnage at the very start here.
Well, unfortunately, it was Nan Ling who was in the pits before the start of the race. Frank Yu doesn't look like he started, and neither did Adley Fong, which is a huge disappointment for one of the more well-known racers around the world. Adley, A1GP, I think, was the first time I came across Adley Fong. And unfortunately, it doesn't look like he even went out onto the track. Dominic Ang caught up in the accident at the start. He is back out on track, having pitted on lap 1 with Douglas Koo Leona Chin, the female racer in this one, and then Aaron Borg also in pits, but I feel like that may be a pit stop that is a retirement.
Right, he was the man on pole, of course, wasn't he, Aaron Borg? As you say, he got biffed in the first corner and got turned around. So I was slightly fearful that we were going to have dramas again, and so it has proved to be, but whether Borg can rally looks rather doubtful now, seeing that he's in the pits and it's a long stop. But Evan Chen is going to have to serve this stop and go. Now, can you combine a stop and go, in other words, a penalty pit stop, with your regulation stop then?
Yes. Oh, no, stop and go you can't.
No, so he's got to make 2 pit stops, is what I'm heading towards.
I refer to the guys at Race Control, and they will inform us as to whether that's possible or not. But it doesn't seem right. If it's a stop and go, it feels like that has to be a whole separate trip into pit lane, doesn't it?
Yeah, I would agree, and that's kind of behind my question, really, that he's got to make 2 pit stops, which will in turn drop him a long way down. What we're not seeing in the leading 23 or so at the moment is anybody actually doing their regulation stop early. So the top 23 all staying out on track, nobody bailing to get out of the way. We have got battles going on, which include here, look, number 10, which is Alistair Young, and 63 being given a bit of a work over. That is Heng Min with the Toro Racing Mercedes, and he drops back. So Alistair Young in the Lexus there, booms past on the inside line. Chen leading by 4 seconds, trying to make good his escape. He needs as big a gap as he can build, doesn't he, for when he has to serve that stop-go penalty.
Alistair Young, the son of Alex Young, one-time Formula One driver, and we saw him actually, the two of them, getting in a bit of rallycross and a bit of bumper cars, the two of them there. We saw them actually as quite early adopters to the SRO series. I feel like we saw them racing in the original Charity Cup at Monza for Europe, in fact, as Evan Chen now dives into the pits. So Alistair Young with plenty of months of experience, as has Alex, but at the moment fighting in the team. Oh no, actually up to 6th now, so that's not too bad.
Yeah, indeed. So Evan Chen, as you say, now pits. The other dark horse in this is becoming the number 45 Mercedes, as a bid is made there. Look, Ling goes up the inside. Kang Ling gains a place, just moves himself up past the Porsche. But as Billy Lowe drops back, so Dervishan Padayachi is in 3rd place, and he's breathing down the neck of Matthew Marsh for 2nd. So can Dervishan Padayachi make it 2 in a row? At the moment, the pace would suggest that he is going to be able to chip away and go after the Porsche in 2nd spot, maybe then after the race leader.
A reminder of our championship positions coming into this race. Seems a bit crazy at the moment. Padayachi won race 1 with Yang Thong Lang in 2nd. Where is he right now? He's down in 16th spot. Sean Thong 3rd last time out, 5th spot at the moment. Adley Thong 4th, a DNS for Adley in this particular race. And then Aaron Borg, who had the pole position, he finished 5th position in Monza, and it's going to be a tall order for him to pick up any decent points after being extracted from the lead of the race at turn 1. So a real different, as I expected, a real different order that we have here to what we saw last time out, and some real send-it moves going on around the lap right now.
And just to confirm, a stop-go does not count as one of your regulation pit stop. So you'll have to do 2 if you are Evan Chen. So he's got the stop go out of the way, but then he has to come back in to serve the regulation stop. As there, now up into 15th place is Jiatong Liang, as Ben rightly says, 2nd in the championship after the Monza race. He's coming under attack from the number 50 Ferrari of Hideto Yasuoka in the Ferrari, the Japanese driver, again from that pro class. Melvin Moe doing a reasonable job in 4th spot at the moment, keeping Sean Tong and Alex Young behind him. But the race leader then, after Evan Chen having been forced to make that pit stop, trying to make good his escape on the road at the moment, as down Matt Solomon will come from the corkscrew. There is Dervishan Padayachi all over the back of Matthew Marsh. So Matthew, who's done lots of racing in his time, as well as being a journalist and broadcaster, keeping Padayachi at bay. Matthew, from memory, had a win at the British Grand Prix one year in the Trofeo Maserati, the red-flagged race, and his car hadn't actually made a pit stop, so he was in the lead when the red flag came out. There was no provision to penalise those that hadn't stopped, so he and Vicky Butler-Henderson took a race win, which was quite a moment. But Matthew here is 2nd. Matt Solomon trying to build the lead on track, isn't he?
Yeah, absolutely, and not a name. Oh yes, he finished with 1 point to his name after the first race in Monza.
Yeah, so Matt Solomon.
So didn't get. Yeah,
sorry, Ben, you broke up for a moment. Yeah, Matt Solomon never really shone, did he? As you say at Monza, he was never really in the mix, but going much, much better here. There through is in 5.79 Alex Au, who's quite an experienced real-world racer from Carrera Cup and from Ferrari Challenge, as well as the GT Series Asia, and he comes then only in 16th place on the tail of Yasuoka. So you've got Ferrari versus Lamborghini in this kind of Auto Italia battle that's raging on right now.
Plenty of time still remaining though, 50 minutes, and in these kind of races, you've got to also factor in the mistakes that the drivers will be making lap after lap, not necessarily adopted so comfortably to the world of sim racing from the real world, and trying to bring in real world traits into the sim world sometimes doesn't pay dividends. So there is, whilst the order looks calm at the moment, the pace isn't actually too bad. They're only lapping, the front runners are only lapping around a second slower than what we saw in the earlier race. So really, remember when we were started the Asia series, the Europe series as a two cars off in the barrier there, and heading straight to the pits. When we saw the European season start, there was about a 5-second deficit between the two categories, but these guys are much closer to each other.
Absolutely. One of those, I think, that was in strife now going for the pits was Yasuoka. Melvin Moe, incidentally, running in 4th place. He has now copped a drive-through penalty for an incident on the opening lap of the race with 2-1-3. Tenku Lei, in the BMW, who came into this race being 6th in the championship. So it's heading into being one of those races where if you keep out of trouble, you're liable to get a half-decent result, aren't you? There are lots of people in strife and now being given penalties.
I spoke a little bit to Matthew Marsh after the first race in Monza, and he was explaining to me that he had an issue with his screens at the start of the race and was struggling with frame rate. So you basically want as many frames per second as you can possibly get to have a smooth frame rate and therefore be able to see where you are turning in. That the less frame rate you have, anything below 60, the car and the inputs don't quite match, and it starts to feel a bit kind of stuttery. So he was fiddling with the frame rate, fiddling with various settings to turn things off to try and increase the frame rate, and ultimately turned his mirrors off as we have more contact at the last turn there, and Taro Zhao now picks up a little bit of damage on his car. And by turning off the mirrors, he'd also had an issue with his screen. So even before the start of the race, he was incredibly stressed, and he was driving by marker boards by the end, braking when he counted to 0 on the marker boards rather than a feel for where he needed to be. Such was the frame rate issue.
And I thought frame rate was how much it costs to hire a Zimmer. We've got more cars off in the background, so there's another Mercedes that's gone rally crossing. It's starting to get a bit more touring car-ish than GT-ish, this, isn't it? There's a lot more leaning going on. 33 Porsche on Taro Zhao, we saw getting roughed up. He's down in 12th. Evan Chen, now, have a look at this. He's 13th after his stop and go, but of course he's still got to serve another penalty. But interesting here, Ben, his pace looks pretty good. He's charging along. He's trying to close up onto the traffic, as you see Division Padayachi going down the hill. And now we've got him shown as being in 4th place. So has he dropped back on this lap? What's going on? Because the Mercedes was 3rd at the start of the lap. Yes, now he's back up into 3rd on that graphic. So Division Padayachi was on the tail of Matthew Marsh, but he's lost a lot of time somewhere by the look of it.
I get the feeling that was a slow lap. We'll get confirmation from the timing screen in just a second. He had dropped, I think, behind Melvin Moe, but Melvin, with a penalty to serve and a drive-through, he's now into the pits and doing that. Exactly the same, I think, as what happened in Monza. I have a feeling that Moe was right at the sharp end of the field, but had to serve a penalty. So Melvin will take 2 trips to pit lane in this race. The good thing is, such chaos across the 1-hour race is, even 2 pit stops, you still, if you've got the pace, might be able to snatch a point or two. Such is the chaos of the race. Matt Solomon leads, Matthew Marsh 2nd, Division Padiachi 3rd, was about right. That was where I think he was 5th for most of the race in Monza, and ended up kind of inheriting the victory with so much chaos going on in front of him.
And of course, we're also talking about the overall situation, but there are points for the top 10 in each class. So you might be in the case, for example, of Antares down in 9th place, but you're scoring better than that within your class. There is number 10, which is Alistair Young, the Axel Sports Lexus, and he is under big pressure, isn't he? Because 98 Honda is there, Freddie Ang, the Arrows racing car, right up behind him. So great little battle this. Good to see two different brands going so well, different types of car as well, because you've got the big grunty Lexus versus the rather more aero-friendly, the rather more svelte shape of the Honda, that they come up over the timing line. Further proof of the variety that we have and how the Assetto Corsa BOP works. We had 9 manufacturers in the top 11 out of the sim race. Not bad at all, was it?
Yeah, absolutely. I love the fact that this Honda is running, because we do see so many of these ACC races where people don't choose the Honda. It's not something that particularly runs well in the form that it is simulated on this particular platform. So it's great to see it. I love it as a car. If it was fast, it would be my choice of car for sure. And we only get to see 1 or 2 in the real world in the Intercontinental GT Series. I think it was both in Indianapolis and at Spa last time out. But there's only one really, I think, that runs, isn't there?
That's right, the Yas Motorsport car in Intercontinental GT, not GT World Challenge Europe. It was at Spa, as you say, because of Intercontinental points. But they are great-looking cars. We just need a few more of them to catch on. Rick Yoon here, another experienced real-world driver. He's an AM, and he is under attack, is he not now? Because as the cars swing through there, you can see Billy Kai-Fung Lo, Billy Lowe with the Audi Sport Asia TSRT entry, the Macanese driver right up behind him as they sweep through the infield of the circuit. So Billy Lowe is another AM. This is 16th overall, but significantly, Ben, it's a battle for class position and class points, isn't it?
It is. I've just managed to pick up on a drive-through penalty for Aaron Borg. Now, he's been given a drive-through penalty for causing a collision with Leona Chin on lap 1 at turn 3. So having been punted out of the lead at turn 1, he obviously came back onto the track and then caused further accidents. So that's a bit of a shame for Aaron Borg, who, despite going into the pits early on and being removed from the track, I had high hopes for at least picking up a couple of points. And unfortunately, now with a second visit, that will be harder, in fact.
Yes, and lots of other people find themselves in bothers further up the road. The late entry to the race, number 2, Aaron Lim, doesn't appear on the entry list, but he did get into the race, started sort of at the front of midfield, if you like, but he also got caught up in the first corner drama, so he's another one a long way back, trying to make up some progress. Matt Solomon's lead gap, though, for my money, is coming down. Matthew Marsh, 2 seconds adrift now. He's getting a little bit closer as we look at Melvin Moe in number 7 on the attack, gets up the inside there to try and find a way past the Porsche 33 of Antares. He does so, but then he runs way out wide over the curb, but does hang on to the place.
I fear Matthew Marsh may have made a mistake. My timing screens are suggesting that he's lost a bundle of time on this last lap. And indeed, as you can see on the left-hand side, Padiachi inherits 2nd, Thong up to 3rd, Young 4th, Ang 5th. Where's Marsh? Is he out? Is he completely out of this race? No, he comes across the line in 7th spot.
And as you were saying that, we had a yellow flag graphic at the top of the screen, which was there for all the amount of time you were telling us how many places he was losing. So yellow flag, Matthew Marsh, are they connected? Well, we might be doing him a disservice, but Matthew Marsh bogged down now in 7th place, seemingly, after a moment. And there he is, number 17, going through. He's fallen back behind Kang Ling. Now, remember at Monza, Ling was very, very quick until, did he have a penalty late race? But here, again, he's underlining the performance that he's got from the Lamborghini, having been in the European Championship at the start of the year in a Mercedes.
Yeah, Matthew Marsh lost 13 seconds on that last lap. It was right at the end of the lap, so I presume a corkscrew issue for him. He wasn't trying to open a bottle of wine. Here is the corkscrew. I think it's the first pun I've ever done, David. You must be...
Welcome. There's another Porsche going off the road there. Now, he's got back onto the track in the background. This is Kang Ling's view as he drops towards the end of the lap. Pit in on the left-hand side. Whoops! Has to work very hard, but he's off the road, Ben.
Oh dear, just lost the rear end under braking into that very hard braking left-hander and manages to keep the car facing the right direction. look at the numbers at the top of his dashboard there. Traction control on 3, ABS on 1. So he really is running this car as a pro driver would, with very little aid at all. If I'm running in this particular platform, I've got all of that turned up to the maximum just to help me keep the car on the road. But with ABS down at the small numbers, I fear as though perhaps a little lock-up going into that final turn, it was enough to take him off the road.
Indeed so. It cost him a place as well, didn't it? So Matthew Marsh back into the top 6. The AM leader, incidentally, is Kevin Say. Now, he won the AM class at Monza. He's leading it here. Whisper it, after what we've seen today. We haven't seen much of it, but this is like consistency, isn't it? Somebody leading their Class 2 races in a row. Devashan Padiachi, second place, Ben, but he's got to make up 5.7 seconds, which is quite a big deficit. And also, just looking at the graphic, his internet connection is not the strongest.
Yeah, that's okay right now. That's when you go above about half, when it starts to get really worrying. Andrew O'Hara demonstrating in the first race exactly what we mean by internet connection. When it goes red, then you're in grave danger of being booted, and I think that's actually how he ended up retiring out the race. Alistair Young with a slow lap that last time through, 1.5 seconds slower than he managed the lap before, so maybe not necessarily a mistake, but just perhaps being caught. Actually, no, he's 2.6 seconds back off Thong now, so there was a little issue there. And actually, look, Freddie Yang is now right on his tail.
Absolutely right. Freddie Yang going really well in the Arrows Racing Honda. Whoops, that I think was number 3, Dominic Yang, getting it not just out of the way, but way out of the way, terrorised into submission. But Freddie Yang is on his toes, certainly, as he is onto the back once more of Alistair Young. So he's closer than ever before, short of going over the top of him. He's going to have to think of something pretty courageous here. He pulls out, has a look as they get on the run now towards the corkscrew as they come along the Rahal Straight, and he goes one side and then the other, but everywhere he wants to go, that Lexus has ticked off the move, again shoves his nose up the inside heading to the corkscrew. It's going to be a very sore nose, that, if he's not careful, because that Lexus is a big car and it's well driven by Alistair Young at the moment, and he's defending stoutly.
Yeah, I think exactly what we described in race 1. Alistair Young somewhere perhaps has had a slide or has just pushed his tyres too much, and he is losing chunks and chunks of time over the pace that he is able to do. Either that or he's had contact somewhere and now is running a slightly limp Lexus to what it should really be, because again, a very slow lap come the end of that lap, and both him and Freddie Yang really delayed.
So through the hairpin comes Ang. They are 4th and 5th. 3.5 seconds back on Sean Tong. The leading gap is 4.1. Padiachi to Tong, a second and a half. Now, don't forget Sean Tong, 3rd at Monza, 3rd here. Devashan Padiachi was the winner there, 2nd here. This is Ang making his move, and he's done it. Good car speed. Dives up on the inside as they head now into turn 5, and he worked hard for that, and he deserved to get through there because he's put a lot of effort into the race thus far.
Again, Alistair Young struggling with grip through the mid-speed corners. That second right-hander around the back of the lap is almost flat out, and I think Alistair Young just losing the rear end a little bit, having to get out the throttle. The Honda was good. Oh, he's too deep into the corkscrew there. And now, will he get a slowdown? Will he get any kind of penalty for that? No, the game decides that he didn't gain an advantage by skipping across the track, but traffic might allow Alistair Young back up the inside, carries more momentum, and may think about going down on the inside. No, it's okay for the moment, but it was a small error from Alistair Young rather than Freddie Yang kind of ultimately having the better pace, although I do feel, though, he should be able to stretch that advantage now in 4th position if he can get his head down and not be distracted by back markers.
Okay, so 4 seconds to make up then to
Sean
Tong. Yeah, back up the inside comes Young. He's got the drag out of the corner, hasn't he? But Ben, he's on the outside now.
He's trying to go round the outside. This is a much harder place to do it, and a little bit of elbowing from Freddie Yang to keep him at bay. And now, really, the next 2 corners are not places where you can run side by side or try and overtake. Not really braking zones. Perhaps going into the left-hander. We saw it in the pro race a couple of times. People jamming out the inside there, but it hasn't happened. And now Alistair Young needs to kind of settle down, try and get those tyres back into working order. But, I think when Alistair has a good lap, he's got the pace to run ahead of Freddie Yang, but too many errors are running into his laps, and Freddie Yang being caught out a couple of times, just running a little bit deep here last time and also into turn 1.
Well, this time he's got it right, and hopefully if he can stretch that margin now over Alistair Young, the pressure won't be quite so bad and he can make fewer enforced errors. The gap has just crept up a little bit. Behind them, remember, in 6th is Matthew Marsh. It's Kang Ling 7th. A class-leading 8th is Kevin Say. 9th is Melvin Moe after his earlier penalty. 10th is the Antares Au Porsche, ahead of Alex Au in 11th in his Lamborghini. Over the timing line goes Freddie Ang, half a second up on Alistair Young as they battle their way through the traffic. The lead gap's coming down again, isn't it? Matt Solomon doing a decent job actually here, but he's 3 seconds ahead, and I just wonder whether Padiachi is going to be able to bring that gap down by much now.
Now, we were saying that the pace, ultimate pace of these guys wasn't far off the sim guys that we saw in the last race. And indeed, best lap from Matt Solomon, a 23.1, plays a 21.9, 21.8 that we saw in our Sim Pro race. But the consistency from these guys is what's key. Last lap for Matt Solomon, a 24.8. So he's way off what he can do. And Padiachi, therefore, taking a second in that last lap alone because of the pace of the Australian behind. So Matt Solomon just maybe again traffic. We've got so much more traffic in this race seemingly than we saw in the previous race because of the difference in kind of experience from all of our drivers, I guess. But Matt Solomon again having to be really careful in the braking zone into the last turn, not to go down the inside unnecessarily and then get himself caught in a silly accident, especially leading the race. And as we spoke about, keeping out of trouble is probably the biggest key of all.
Absolutely so. Well, there he is, the Hong Kong driver, born to an Australian dad and a Chinese mum, but he has the Hong Kong licence as well as an Aussie passport. We've seen him in Europe in Formula 3, Matt Solomon, but has raced a lot in China. Good battles going on here as Kang Ling tries to get up through the traffic. Also, the battle between the Owls rages on. Alex Au on the back of Antares Au, so it's the Porsche ahead of the Lamborghini. This is for 10th place. Look as they climb the rise, heading up towards the Andretti hairpin. Alex Au will dive to the inside line, but he's not near enough. Antares Au goes a bit deep into the corner, however. Is that going to let the Lamborghini challenge coming out the other side? The answer is no. And then behind them, look, you've got James Russell, who is on the charge once more. He has dropped back a little bit from his grid position, but that's the other Honda in the race starting to play catch-up now.
Yeah, that's a really interesting corner, that first turn, because you can do exactly what the Porsche did. Go a little bit deep into the first time. Now the Lamborghini has a space, and Alex Au does make that move stick, and now has to keep the momentum all the way up the hill, do a little bit of defence, which is going to allow James Russell to come and play as well. Holds the inside line there. That's going to compromise his speed really up the hill, and here comes James Russell to take another position from Antares Au. He's got the inside line in the corkscrew, and in fact is ahead even before they get to the braking zone.
And you might remember a few laps back as well, we had a couple of cars off coming towards turn 11, bailing for the pits, one of them being the white Ferrari, number 50 of Hideto Yasuoka. Well, he has also now copped a drive through for causing a collision with Aaron Borg. So Borg has got a penalty himself, and then he has been the victim of more dramas. So it's all going on as the battle continues out on track right now.
And therefore, at the end of that lap, Antares Au heads to pit lane, having had lost 2 positions, maybe overheating his tyres. Good choice to have a bit of a reset, to sit there just for a couple of moments, kind of roll the shoulders, relax the wrists, take a sip of water. You don't have a long time stationary, but it's enough time just to breathe after a very, very intense lap.
Another Porsche off the road, or another car, I should say, off the road. It looked Porsche-ish briefly as we got a glimpse of it back on the road. However, there's quite a lot going on in this race as there whoops round the outside and off the road goes 38, which is Kevin Say. There was another car off the road there. It's recovered, but all of a sudden, people's sat-navs have packed up, Ben. There's a lot of people making errors and running off the road, and there's another spin. Is that Matthew Marsh? It is, and as he rejoins, he collects traffic and goes around. So Matthew Marsh has had a big, big drama at the corkscrew.
Yeah, and he's going to get a penalty for unsafe rejoin as well, for sure. That was clumsy. Very difficult to know exactly when to rejoin. You don't have the perception with a single screen like so many of these drivers will be running to see when cars are coming, especially at speed when you're parked up on the side of the road. But Matthew Marsh's race from the very beginning going so well is unravelling. 2 spins now. He's going to have damage and he's gone to the pit lane.
So in he comes. Will he rejoin from there? We'll wait and see as number 10 goes through Alistair Young, running in 5th place, remember. Kang Ling is the man doing the chasing, and it is Freddie Ang whom Young is currently chasing. Turning now up through the approach towards the Rahal Straight, so out of turn 5, turn 6 sequence, there goes Young. Brilliant representation of the Laguna Seca circuit. This, as Matthew Marsh tumbles down the order now that he's in the pits. Evan Chen moves ahead of him on the corrected order, and another spin. That was 33 facing the wrong way, so the Porsche of Antares Au has gone around.
Oh, after his pit stop, running in the top 10, but it's all kind of unravelling for him now. We've had plenty of people visiting the pits as we're about halfway through the race, so I wonder if these guys want to divide the race into 2 and use the halfway point as their point for a breather. It does look like they're all struggling with tyres way more than we saw from our sim drivers. And now Tanaku Lei up the inside of a Mercedes. Is that for position? It is. In fact, it's the 2 Leis.
2 Leis Trek up towards the corkscrew. We've got a drive-through coming now for Matthew Marsh for his unsafe rejoin, as you predicted. So 2-1-3, Tenku Lei trying to gain ground, currently running in 13th place. 12th ahead of him, in number 12 is Tenku Jan Lei. So the 2 of them, different teams running these cars. And it's going to be the BMW trying to make its move up on the inside. Bang, you could see that contact coming, couldn't you?
Well, yes, and so will the drivers. It's not as though they are completely unsighted. They will potentially have an audio warning that there's a car up the inside. Not all drivers have that, and it's certainly an add-on that you need to put onto this particular platform. But they do have a radar that will show where the other car is. That was a little naughty, although I felt like the BMW was out of braking power and running deep. But they have a radar. They can see exactly where cars in their close proximity are. And therefore, if you've got someone diving up the inside of you, there's no point turning in because you can see that there's a car there. You might as well just, if you want to try and run side by side and be clean, do it, but unnecessary contact.
We saw Alex Au gaining ground a little while ago, number 579. He's into 9th place overall, but he's now 2nd in the AM class. He's got 6 seconds to make up to Kevin Say and 28 and 3/4 minutes in which to do it. That, I feel, is going to be worth keeping an eye on, as here Melvin Moe fights back and goes ahead of Kang Ling. Remember, Melvin Moe earlier on had a drive-through penalty, so he has got the pace. He's certainly got good car speed here, and he goes through up into 6th position, bearing in mind that none of our leading 11 have served their regulation pit stop yet.
Yeah, that's very impressive. 6th spot, still needs to pit. We haven't had very many pitters from the head of the field, so considering he's had that drive-through penalty, he's running in a really strong spot. Now 12 seconds back off Alistair Young ahead. You get the feeling, and let me just check the lap times, that he could easily catch Alistair Young and Freddie Ang that we saw with that entertaining battle early on between Honda and Lexus. And they all still have to do their pit stop. Melvin Moe's drive-through doesn't count as a pit stop. But ultimately, like we saw in Monza, he's running well.
Indeed so. So Melvin Moe with good pace comes down through the corkscrew. What did he get out of the Monza race in the end? It was only 14th, but here, despite being up and down the order, it looks encouraging for him. The best of the stoppers, the BMW 213 of Tenku Ejen Lei, 6th in the championship he is, and in the AM class, Kevin Say's 6.2 second margin is down already to 5.4. So Alex Au is getting on with the programme, so to speak. 27 minutes are still on the clock. Matt Solomon remains the race leader. Division Pariachi in 2nd place, both ex-real world Formula 3 racers, as there Matthew Marsh comes up to have a go on the outside line of Antares Au. The Porsches falling down the order a little bit after their travails. They're 18th and 19th. And there, also trying to squeeze through on the inside line, is the Mercedes.
Interesting, though, that Matthew Marsh has taken his drive-through penalty. He's also done his pit stop, and he still looks to be one of the few drivers. I was just seeing how many cars are ahead that have pitted. Not so many, maybe 3 or 4 or 5. So still in a relatively strong position. Such again as a field spread and different talents that we've got in this. If you have a penalty, it is not completely game over.
And the AM battle is closing up all the time because Alex Au has got it from 6 to 5 to 3.1 seconds now. So we are set, I think, for a good fight between the two for the AM class lead. It's all further up the road there as you see Freddie Ang goes through, but it's 8th and 9th overall where the next battle is going to come from. Sean Thong in the Audi running 3rd. Freddie Ang here is in traffic, but he's in 4th place overall.
Yeah, and that's the other racing line that you can do through turn 1. Go deep into the brakes, go deep into the turn, and if you're not being challenged from behind, gives you a much straighter exit out of the turn and ultimately gives you a little bit more speed. You cover more distance, and there's always an argument to say which one's better, hugging the inside line and going slower. Certainly when you're racing in traffic, definitely the idea to do, but sometimes if you're on a clear lap and if you see kind of a Superpole-esque lap, you may see somebody diving quite deep into that first turn. So sometimes it looks like they're running deep and they've outbraked themselves. Sometimes it's simply a choice for the driver. But we are seeing such variance between the different lap times. I think mainly because of traffic. And Kevin C has been very slow the last 2 laps, as you've been mentioning, and has been gobbled up by Alex Au. But again, I think because he's been behind certain cars that are slower.
Possibly so. Another stop-go is coming for Andrew Harrianto. Further down, he's a AM class driver. He's been an AM in Super Trofeo as well as in GT racing. As up towards the timing line there goes Freddie Ang, still chipping away to try to catch Sean Thong as he goes through. And Matt Solomon's advantage, 4.6 seconds. It's interesting this, isn't it? Dervishan Padiachi just does not have an answer to him. The gap built early on as Padiachi had to get up through the traffic, and Solomon has been able to preserve it ever since. Another back marker goes wide. Freddie Ang easily goes through the traffic there, and 1.9 seconds adrift he is. Going through is 2:13 in 11th overall, which is Tenku Ijanlei.
Yeah, but he's just been passed by Evan Chen, so yes. The 68 is just ahead there in the Leighton House. He was the car that has done various drive-through. Oh gosh, he's now gone wide and let him pass quite easily. I was about to give him loads of praise. He's done a drive-through penalty for causing a collision. He's done his pit stop from the front of the grid, and I've actually just had a look at his profile. And his opening quote was, once a wise man told me, do not give up when you get punted off at turn 1. And did he not do the punting at turn 1 this time?
I think he was the punter rather than the puntee, wasn't he? Yes, you're right. So the wise man didn't tell him what to do in that situation, clearly. But Evan Chen has got on with the job. He is actually, to be fair to Evan, a very, very competitive real-world racer. So it's no surprise that the speed is there. But racing in a GT3 Porsche, even if it's a virtual one, is relatively new. He was in Super Trofeo last year and did very, very well at Jerez at the World Finals. So Evan Chen battles on. The gap has suddenly gone up again in our AM battle, by the way. It was down to 2.3. It's up to 4.7 seconds now. So all of a sudden, Alex Au has dropped away.
Yeah, slow lap last time, 26.7. Played at 24.0. So again, I think it's down to traffic trying to get past slower cars. You're seeing such a variance, as I said, in lap time. And you get it all excited about a battle that's going to happen on the timing screens, and then the next lap it's a big gap simply because one has managed to get past traffic and the other did not. So difficult for our director to choose the battles because it can, in a matter of seconds,
can all change, can't it? Incheon An you're looking at, he's dropped a long way back, 27th. This is the leader. This is Matt Solomon then, so the Hong Kong driver has got 22 more minutes. He's yet to make his pit stop. Now look on the graphic, you've got the position, the driver, the brand for whom they're driving, the car number, and then that one is pit stops to serve. When it goes green, as you will see for the car in 11th place, that means they've done it. So none of the leading 10 have served the regulation pit stop, and they're leaving it late here, 22 minutes on the clock. Matt Solomon in the Mercedes turns his way down through turns 1 and 2, the Andretti hairpin. gets onto the power now, comes out the other side of that corner and makes the drop down the hill once again. So Matt Solomon with Dervish Padiachi in second spot. Third is Sean Tong. Fourth, Freddie Ang. You've got Alistair Young currently fifth. Melvin Moe is sixth. Kang Ling seventh. Kevin Say is eighth, still clear in the AM class over Alex Au. No, he's not anymore. James Russell is up into ninth. Alex Au drops back into 10th place. So Alex Au has had a moment somewhere. Meantime, Matt Solomon is still well clear in the lead of the race. 4.6 seconds over Dervish Padiachi. Matt Solomon, who has done a bit of racing in Australia, but began karting before he went to the Formula Masters China single-seater series. Now there, Alex Au pressing on behind in 10th overall. Now he's dropped out behind James Russell, as I said. His next target was going to be Kevin Say, but he's got to regroup and try and get himself back up ahead of the Honda here. Something like that is Alex Au. Here he goes. And he'll convert that 29 at Solomon, 4.2 seconds to the good over Padiachi. Sean Tong looking for second, third place in a row here. So the cars accelerate down the hill once again. But right now, now is the man on the tail, or trying to get onto the tail of James Russell. The Honda being able to preserve this margin. It's only half a second as Alex Au closes up now, coming down towards turn 11. And as the cars come up over the timing line, Matt Solomon currently is the man in the of the race. 28 laps in the book.
Fantastic racing so far, David. Thoroughly enjoying the action. We've got Matt Solomon as our race leader. 28 laps on the books. 19 minutes and 53 seconds in to the race remaining. Padiachi running in P2, 3.7 seconds away from the race lead, with Thong in third position, a further 1.6 seconds back. The action has been intense once again. Laguna Seca serving up a fantastic race, and David thoroughly enjoying all of the action that we've seen so far. So Solomon continues to remain in the lead. We're looking at Au now, currently in 10th position, fighting down into the corkscrew. He's got a couple of cars ahead of him. The blue flags are waving. Traffic has been something of a difficulty in this race so far. The drivers have got to be so careful not to be involved, get caught up in another person's race further down the running order. One of the many challenges of endurance racing. And David Au moves up to 9th position now as he's chasing down Russell ahead.
It's going well for him, isn't it? And the order is starting to shuffle, Paul, as we're getting one or two of them serving their pit stop. So Freddie Ang has pitted. Also, what's intriguing me is that the lead gap is coming down. We were saying it was round about the 4-second mark. It's down to 3, Solomon to Padiachi. So Dervish Padiachi, the Australian-based driver, has not given up. There is Freddie Ang rejoining. He finds himself on the outside of Alex Au, who has yet to stop. So this is important for Ang. He's got to get through without losing time. Alex Au is fending him off as they make the run here up through turn 4 and then on to 5.
Fantastic stuff there. And again, just was saying a little bit earlier on, the danger as he came out into the traffic, there was a car trying to get out of the way to avoid being lapped, to help being lapped. And this is really difficult times for all the drivers, avoiding getting caught up in somebody else's problem. And Ang now is very much a man on a charge, 8th position now.
Indeed so, and he's the best, Paul, of those that have served their pit stops. So there's a chance he can gain further ground before the end. If he can get through traffic, his lap times would be better. That would stand him in good stead. But this is one of the problems that we discussed at the top of the show. If you make your pit stop and come out of the pits in traffic, suddenly you're stuck, you're slow, and it goes against you. So there is Freddie Ang ahead of the delayed Matthew Marsh, turning up towards the timing line. Matt Solomon's lead is coming down and down and down. 4 seconds, 3 seconds, it's now 2.6. So Padiachi is storming along behind Matt Solomon for the race leaders. There is Honda number 98. Freddie Ang in 8th place, coming through turns 1 and 2.
Yeah, and as you say, Ang stuck in this traffic, absolute disaster for him. Now managing to dive down the inside. I don't know if that's worked. Yes, it has, and no contact. So that's good news. He can now focus on getting away from the Laundry House car behind.
So up towards turn 5 they will come. Matt Solomon, though, is the race leader, like I say, being caught by Dervishen Padiachi. Sean Tong is 3rd. It's Alistair Young in 4th place. And the leader is into the pit lane now. So Matt Solomon comes in, and this means that Padiachi should be able to inherit the race lead at the end of the lap. Yes, it does. Padiachi now takes over the advantage, Ben, but he's got to treat this like a qualifying session, hasn't he, to try and get a bit of time in hand for keeping the lead once he pits over Solomon.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's going to be about what you have in terms of traffic when they come out of the pits. We know that they're equal kind of on pace if they had clear track between the two of them, but the question remains, having pitted, where will he come out? Will he have traffic? How many laps on different parts of the track will they have to do before the reaction from the other driver? Traffic is going to be the key to winning or losing. We know that strategically you don't need to do anything in terms of change tyres or change fuel, so it is all going to be about traffic.
15 minutes and change on the clock here at Laguna Seca, round 2 of the GT World Challenge Asia Esports Championship, presented by Tarmac Works. It's a race now being led by Dervishen Padiachi. As you see, 66 Nan Lin with the Toro Racing Mercedes go through, but that is badly delayed in 31st place. In 24th, currently, Andrew Harrianto's Bentley. Experienced real-world racer is Andrew, and he is going in pursuit of Yuki Taniguchi's KCMG entered Nissan. So the order shuffling now that we have got these regulation pit stops being served. No window, you do them when you want. But this is an extra facet to this championship that we didn't have in the European. Matt Solomon then back out after the regulation stop then, and he is in 7th place. But look, he's found a few slower cars, relatively speaking, ahead of him, so he can't do totally clear laps right now.
Yeah, so let's keep an eye on those lap times then. At the moment, obviously, with the outlap, so difficult representation. But whilst Padiachi has clear track, that is where I would be staying. Interesting to know if these guys from, for instance, Craft Bamboo Racing haven't. I know that they've got engineers working with their real-world drivers to set the cars up and to make sure they're operating correctly. But they may also have spotters being able to watch this race. And there is a particular screen where you can see exactly where cars are on track, so they could be predicting where to come out on the track so that you don't come out in too much traffic. One thing that potentially smaller teams may not have, so it'd be interesting to see if a team such as Craft Bamboo with so much facilities and engineers perhaps that have not so much to do this year, because of course it's not just the drivers that aren't driving, it's the whole teams that don't have the operational need, and therefore those people who are on full contracts have been shifted over to the sim racing to try and get their representation as competitive as possible.
And that brains trust then going to work. As for Laundry House, Evan Chen now ready to make a move to break into the top 10 against Tenku Ejenlei, the Tedco BMW just ahead of the Porsche. Evan Chen delayed early on. He has now, as Ben made the point a little while ago, done both his penalty pit stop and his regulation pit stop. Billy Lowe comes in. Padiachi getting away from Tong, 2.3 seconds. But has Padiachi been able to do quick enough lap times to be able to maintain an advantage over Matt Solomon when he comes out of the pit lane? That's going to be the real fascination in this. And the leading 5, Ben, running it late, aren't they? 13 minutes to go, and they've not yet pitted.
Yeah, exactly. Very similar to what we saw Filippo Bocchida do in the first race. We were kind of questioning why you would choose to go so long. But interesting that even the guys who have been running at the head of the field throughout the race have chosen to do the same. Interesting also, I think, that Matt Solomon came out of the pits only about 2 seconds ahead of Freddie Ang. He should have had way more an advantage than that. And so Ang, remember, battling for 4th position with Alistair Young, has made up good ground on Solomon after the pit stops, and does then question where the rest of our top 5 will fall into line once they make their stops. Evan Chen here struggling to get past the BMW.
Yes, he is, isn't it? It's interesting this. We talk about how well the BOP works. You see that when a driver is in clear air, clear track space, able to push, able to bring down a gap, and then you find the car ahead of you, and where can you find a way past? Because in theory, the BOP should mean that over a lap, the cars equate. Porsche might be good at certain areas, the BMW elsewhere. So if it's a well-driven car that's ahead of you and it can defend properly and safely, getting past becomes very difficult indeed. Evan Chen tries to ride the curb a little bit. That gives him more momentum down towards turn 11, but of course he gets a face full of BMW. Can he get the switch back? No, he can't. Good defensive driving this by Tenko Ejenley ahead of him.
Yeah, and now the BMW has a Bentley ahead of him, so the traffic will be something that the two of them will be looking to play with. Every time I see traffic ahead of me, I think, well, how can I use this traffic to my advantage? How can I place my car and the car that I'm fighting with in a position to compromise them so that I can get past? Sometimes you can't get past another car because it's just too good in certain areas, as Pagliacci now comes to pit lane. But this is a great opportunity for Evan Chen, that Bentley and the Porsche are ahead, both not running as fast as these two, and maybe he can get down the inside here. Oh, they're going to try and go 3 wide. That's not very sensible. Chen needs to be really careful here, and he's going to go around the outside the Porsche. No, Porsche stays on the inside line. Oh dear, oh, nearly contact, and now he's really boxed in because he's got the Bentley in front of him, and the BMW goes the inside. Contact!
Round goes Chen, Bentley goes wide, Evan Chen facing the wrong way to an extent. That was all a bit self-induced, wasn't it? But he has been off the racetrack, trying to rejoin. Look at Pagliacci still in the pit lane. Will Matt Solomon go ahead of him? I don't think he has. Pagliacci, Ben, looks like if he gets out cleanly, he will have kept the lead on the pit stops. We need now to go and find the number 45 Mercedes, don't we? Because we have had on the pit stops a significant development. It looks like Pagliacci has just got out ahead.
It would make sense. There is Matt Solomon from second position. Is Pagliacci ahead? No, he's not. He's behind. Pagliacci has come out in third position behind Freddie Ang. So whatever Ang did, he did a fantastic stop. Maybe, I can't really explain it because Pagliacci has not really had any issues throughout the race. It's just been a long stop for him. Perhaps he didn't attack the pit lane speed limits as much, but Solomon leads, Ang second, Pagliacci third now.
Yeah, I think he made it looked like an okay stop that got him out ahead, but then that slower line through the first corner when he got to the next sector point dropped him back. So Pagliacci there on his toes, and it is Freddie Ang then now taking the battle to Matt Solomon. Yes, so 1.6 seconds between the new top two. Freddie Ang was one of those that pitted early, wasn't he? So he's just been quietly getting on with the job while everybody else has been leaving it late.
And it's just simply being on a different part of the track to your rivals. So your rival might be coming up to traffic that you don't see because you are a 3/4 of a lap around in a different place. Kevin C, the leader of our AMs, I just saw in the background going into pit lane. He needs to look at the Lamborghini of Alex Au to see whether he can stay in that AM lead. He had full points from Monza, but I fear as though when he comes out of the pit lane, it could be pretty close for him to retain that lead with Au, Lei and Lowe running pretty fast.
Indeed so. Freddie Ang, regular in the Malaysian Super Series, although his early car racing goes back to 2011 when he drove in the JK Asia Racing Series, which was effectively by that stage Formula BMW, unofficial Formula BMW Asia. So he goes through now. There's the sister Honda, 898 is the car of James Russell. So 98 and 898, the Arrows Racing Hondas. One is 11th, the other one in terms of pit stoppers is second. Now, of course, Freddie Ang 1.4 seconds adrift of the race leader. What can he do to get on terms with Solomon in the 8th May? This is Evan Chen trying to get himself back up the order. It's been a really checkered race, hasn't it? He's been up and down the order race long here with penalties, incidents, and when he's in the right direction, good car speed.
Yeah, absolutely, but really kind of needed to be a bit more careful in that incident that we saw him getting caught up with. You could see it developing corner after corner. It was getting more and more chaotic, and for somebody who's got that pace, who knows that they can do it at the next corner, I would have just backed out and let the chaos occur as the Bentley goes round behind him. That Bentley is a lap down. Kevin C looks like he's come out of the pits at the head of the AM category, so he's managed to complete his pit stop and still has about 6 seconds advantage over Alex Au. 4 more cars to pit in 7 minutes of racing. That's only about 5 laps.
It is, isn't it? Yeah, Kevin say you're quite right. Keeps that position over Alex Au. But I'm looking at what's, if you like, the real gap for the lead coming down. Matt Solomon to Freddie Ang, 0.7 of a second. So it's come down from 1.6 to 0.8 to 0.7. Freddie Ang leaving nothing on the table as he gets through the traffic. Where up the road is the Mercedes as he comes then down the hill this time? In fact, Where has Matt Solomon gone?
Yeah, exactly. Matt Solomon's had a very slow lap. He's lost 9 seconds. I think what we saw there on board was Solomon recovering from a mistake. We saw him running slowly and didn't pick up that it was Solomon at the time. But Freddie Ang just sweeping around the outside easily, and Solomon must have got caught up in some traffic, I think. He's dropped behind Padiachi now, and would you believe it, Ang leads. Now, Ang and Alistair Young were fighting at the start of the race. Alistair Young is just exiting pit lane. We're watching Matt Solomon here, but Alistair Young could get himself in the pound seat as well.
Yes, you're not wrong, because those two have showed good speed all the way through. Freddie Ang from the second row of the grid, he actually out-qualified Matt Solomon and Division Padiachi, but he got a bit delayed in the first corner fracas, but he's made good since then. So now Freddie Ang leads from Division Padiachi, and then Alistair Young third. He's a 1.5 seconds back. So yes, Matt Solomon, whatever drama he had, has really cost him dear, because in real terms he's down in 4th. It says 7th on the graphic, I know, but the top 3, don't forget, have yet to serve their mandatory regulation stops. There's only 5 minutes in this race remaining, and Freddie Ang is doing a brilliant job in Honda.
Yeah, I think Sean Thong can get himself in the mix as well. Looking at how good Alistair Young's pit stop was, how he's put himself in real contention even with Padiachi. Can't believe Freddie Ang is leading this race. It just didn't look like it in the first stint that was possible, but he just timed that pit stop correctly and has been able to lap faster than everybody else whilst they've been tripping over traffic. I feel like Sean Thong can do it. Melvin Moe and Kang Ling in the pits. They are quite a way back from Sean Thong, and therefore I expect them to come out the pits behind this gaggle. But look at the traffic that Matt Solomon is having to contend with. It's really, really tricky.
And the reason he's in it, in part, is because of that moment that he had. So right now, it is Sean Thong in the lead, but he's got to stop, so it could be a brief lead for Thong, this, as he goes down through that number 40. There is Matt Solomon trying to clear the traffic. Melvin Moe joins, and that's a place gain for Solomon then on the pit stops there. Melvin Moe drops back behind him, arguably where he should be, because Solomon was ahead early doors before he made his mistake. Kang Ling now pits and drops back into 8th place, so it's only Thong still to go. That's the leader off the road. Sean Thong is off the road, and I think, who was that getting involved with him? Was it Padiachi? Or was it Alistair Young?
I think maybe the director kind of insinuating that Padiachi, for the lead of the race there, got together. And I'm also trying to do the maths and thinking, hang on, Melvin Moe was 10 seconds behind Sean Thong before the pit stops. When Thong comes out of the pits, he could well lead this race as well, such as his pace been, depending on how long his stop is. So I don't feel like this is over yet at all. And we also know that Melvin Moe has great pace and could easily challenge Matt Solomon too.
Okay, so we're getting more penalties coming. Incheon An has got one for causing a collision with the Alex Au Lamborghini, but it's all unravelled for Freddie Ang, having just been praising him. He's trying to play catch-up now after off which could become 5th, depending on where Sean Thong will drop to after the next round of stops. In other words, the last pit stop of anybody. Sean Thong has got to make the last stop. Don't pronounce the H, do you? Sean Thong still to stop. Padiachi is the new race leader in real terms. Alistair Young 4.5 seconds back. Matt Solomon heading for the podium. Melvin Moe ahead of Freddie Ang, so he will be absolutely furious. But it may well be, Ben, that the story of the race doesn't check a flag here.
Yeah, I think some work to do for race control to monitor everything. And of course, in the real world, it's hard to make informed decisions about accidents. But in the virtual world, you can replay every single angle. Race control have got probably 15 different angles from each different car to monitor to really get a full picture of exactly what happened. Sean Tong now goes into pit lane. This is crucial to see where he comes out in comparison to David Pagliacci, who leads. There was a 29-second gap before the stops. Look at the left of your screen. When that P disappears, he is exiting the pits. Here is Dominic. Here's Pagliacci. Look to the right-hand side. Oh, I think there's Tong. Is that Tong going on along the pit lane now? I think it may be. So yes, Tong's not going to pick up the lead of the race, and in fact may even fall behind the top 5 drivers.
Well, he's certainly going to be lucky, I think, to hang on to a podium, which is just about where he was early doors. So he was third early. There he is rejoining. But where in relation to all of this is Melvin Moe, for example, and Matt Solomon? He's going to come out ahead of Solomon and Moe, isn't he? So that is going to put Tong in 3rd place. It'll be Pagliacci from Alistair Young, from Tong, Solomon, Moe and Ang. But as Tong now has to get back up to speed, he's got Solomon and Moe not that far behind him. Look, it's about a length only between them for 3rd and 4th. There'll be one more lap to run at the end of this. So Sean Tong has got to make that car wider than it was ever intended to be.
This is going to be a fantastic battle for the final podium spot, and maybe even more depending on what penalties get handed out. Drive-through penalty to Alistair Young. And is that for skipping the track, or is that something that's come from Race Direction? We wait to see. I think Race Direction have handed out something to Alistair Young. So maybe I was wrong. Maybe it was Alistair Young, as you suggested, David, that had contact with Freddie Ang. They've been battling throughout the race and have been so fair with each other before, but maybe not on that most important of moments.
Well, I thought the pictures were suggesting that the Lexus had been there. As Tong goes off the road in the traffic, he's outbraked himself. Solomon is delayed. Melvin Moe, he's going to gain 2 places out of all of that. This is the battle for 3rd. On to the last lap. Melvin Moe goes up to 3rd. Solomon 4th. Down to 5th is Sean Tong. He tried to brake late in the traffic and just went straight off the racetrack. And it is a penalty for number 10, Young, for causing a collision with Freddie Ang at turn 7. Yes, what was puzzling me was how they got together, because, of course, it was Pagliacci between them. So whenever it was that kicked off, Young was the kicker. And he's got this drive-through penalty for causing a collision with Freddie Ang. So right now it is Pagliacci leading. Young will get a drive-through or a time penalty post-race. So Melvin Moe, who's just got himself up into 3rd, he's going to inherit 2nd. Solomon has got himself past Sean Tong, and that's not done yet. And look, Freddie Ang is closing. This could either be a great race to the end, or it could end in a big heap.
Oh, Sean Tong's got great momentum.
Sean Tong
it's a
into
heap.
the back of Matt Solomon. Off they go. Tong into the barrier. Solomon facing the wrong way. More mayhem.
Oh, absolutely unnecessary. He had such great pace and just didn't even try to overtake. Just went straight into the tail of them and caused chaos. But here, again, out of the chaos comes David Pagliacci.
It's going to be 2 out of 2 then. He won at Monza, and again, Laguna Seca's checkered flag falls for David Pagliacci. 2 out of 2. And that was really by playing it safe. He didn't have the quickest car all afternoon. He's led far fewer laps than Matt Solomon and others, but he was there when it matters. David Pagliacci, his 2nd win of the season. Now, 2nd across the line is Alistair Young, but he's got this penalty that's going to be converted to 30 seconds, isn't it? So Melvin Moe will inherit 2nd place, and 3rd is going to be Freddie Ang. So a podium is justifiable reward, but little consolation for being nerfed out when he was in the lead of the race. It'll take rather a long time to unravel, so head towards the GT Asia Esports website post-race and you can read the full story of all of this and get the full result, because I think there's going to be a lot for Race Direction to have a look at. But the one thing that we can pretty much vouchsafe for is that David Pagliacci has taken the race win, and a really impressive drive, yet again, keeping out of trouble and being able to take the points, not getting involved in any silliness, and David Pagliacci doing a very good job there, Ben.
Yeah, absolutely. And a really close end to the AM battle as well. Kevin C taking full points for that, but he was pursued by Al to the very, very end, just a couple of seconds separating them by the end. And we were watching Kang Ling and Evan Chen over the line as well. They were very, very close too. So to the very end, it's so entertaining. And I love the fact that Sean Tong left it to the end to make that pit stop, keeping that jeopardy up all the way to the line.
Yeah, it's still fascinating, isn't it, to see when people make these pit stops and the thinking that goes in behind. But real shame for Freddie Ang. It looked as though he nailed that race, but I'm still slightly intrigued as to how Alistair Young ended up with him, because it seemed to be Ang, Padiachi, and then Young as the top three. Anyway, the net result, it was contact, and the story, guys, will continue. Lots there, Paul, to reflect on after another hour of racing that absolutely flew by.
Fantastic, brilliant. Thank you very much, David and Ben. And what an incredible, a sensational end to that Pro-Am race of real drivers. I came upstairs to get in position to do the studio bits, and it had all changed. Fantastic stuff. And Ben Constanduras alongside me. Once again, our pro drivers certainly know how to serve up a spicy racing encounter.
And do you know what really spices it up is this pit stop that they'll have to make. It just keeps you guessing all the way to the end. And some of the drivers, like Sean Tong, leaving it to the last lap. He did the same in Monza and the same here, meaning you don't actually know where he's going to come back into the race when he does make that stop. And then people at different paces, falling back into line, racing with new people. And we saw a little bit too much chaos in the end. I'm really unfortunate for Freddie Ang, because he had driven a really good second half of the race to put him in a position where he led. And then with contact twice over, it was very unfortunate for him. But ultimately keeping out of trouble, as we said at the start, was the key. And Padiachi now with a commanding championship lead, 2 wins out of 2.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. That's just what I was going to say. While we had drama and action, accidents and overtakes throughout the field, we spoke about it before the race started. Starting from 9th position was Division Padiachi, the race 1 winner at Monza, and he just performed flawlessly. Great speed when he needed it, kept the car clean, kept it out of trouble, and that is the hallmark of a champion driver for sure. And now, 50 points from 2 races. He's got the advantage heading into the last rounds of the series.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, remember the 3 rounds left, the 3 point scoring rounds, two rounds in the championship, and then a voted final round on a track that we yet to know. But what would you choose if you were an Asian driver? I think you'd be wanting to go back to Suzuka, wouldn't you? So that would be quite an interesting thing.
Suzuka's a good call, but there's always Bathurst to throw things up as well. But before we get on to that one, I believe we've got our race 1 winner. So we've got Andrew Lawrenson, who won from Australia, who won race 1, who won the first encounter of this event in the GT World Challenge Esports Asia Series by... So Andrew, if you're there with us at all, please, sir, congratulations on race 1 victory.
Thank you. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Yeah, you made it look quite easy out there, to be honest, I think. How was it from your point of view?
Well, not that easy. It was all about tyres, really. It's surprisingly dusty there, even in the cold weather. So with the temperatures that low, to try and get a gap for the pit strategy that we were running, we had to run to a delta for sort of 23 laps, get enough of a gap so that Yuki in the Ferrari or Andy, whoever was coming in second, wasn't going to jump us in the pits. So it was stressful, to say the least.
Was it always the strategy to run fast right from the very off and get a gap to the cars behind? Or do these things evolve as the race progresses and your rivals lay out on circuit?
I'd worked out that was probably the quickest way to do it if I was able to put it on pole. If we were to have ended up somewhere back in the middle of the pack, I don't think that strategy would have been the way to go. It probably would have been a full fuel splash and dash sort of job. But yeah, if we would have put it on pole, which luckily we did by barely anything, that was the way to run it.
And we've seen so far this series very different strategies from the drivers, pitting early, pitting late, going in at half distance. What sort of thought process and calculations do you, as a driver, make in advance of a race to make these decisions of when you're going to stop?
Spreadsheets, really interesting stuff. I'll sit there on Excel and try and figure out all the possible permutations that might be available to not just our car, my car, but the other cars that are close to us for that particular track, to try and figure out what they're likely to do in a given set of circumstances and what we can then do to be quicker than that. I had a similar sort of setup for Monza, managed to botch qualifying, and everything went downhill from there.
Brilliant stuff. To give our viewers at home a bit of an idea, before I hand over the questions to Ben, to give our viewers at home a bit of an idea, how much time and practice and laps do you put in ahead of these races to get yourself in a position where you can go ahead and win a relative canter?
Too much is probably the right answer. Marshy and Evan in the real race, they've hopped on board with us as well. So we've been on there probably at least every day or every second day, work commitments allowing. Sort of just running the thing in, starting from the qualifying setup and then working that backwards towards a race setup and then working that towards a strategy from there. But that's probably been since Monza, day in, day out, just to get it to a point where we're confident to run it across the race. And then, of course, you can clip a sausage curb and all that's for nothing. So, but at least it doesn't cost us anything but time to do that.
Oh, fantastic to hear. And Ben, it's amazing the amount of commitment these drivers put in, isn't it?
It's good. And given that everybody does it, it sort of serves to make the race itself much more enjoyable when everyone has that much preparation ahead of time.
And talk a little bit, Andrew, about your team, Laundry House. Plenty of members of that team. What does that team mean? How does it work? And of course, you've all got different cars, so it's not necessarily about simply exchanging setups and notes between all the different manufacturers, because they will mean very different things to different people.
Excellence by accident, really. It all came together. First as a bit of a joke and find a way to run a Leighton House sort of heritage livery without being called Leighton House. We managed to do that. We weren't running the same car at Suzuka. And then after Suzuka and Monza, we thought, we'll put the feelers out, see if we can get anyone else on there. And Marshy and Evan came on board as well in the real race. They've been great to sort of bounce ideas back and forth across as well. But yeah, we're on it for a bit of a laugh, take it seriously when on track, and not so much otherwise. But it's a great team. You know, we've got significant funding out of Nigeria, and we'll be putting that into, we're thinking Venezuelan currency would probably be the best at the moment to pursue sponsorship deals and development of the team.
Hey, I spoke a little bit about on the stream that you're running a butt kicker according to your press release. That's not somebody kicking you up the butt. That is that's something. Do you think that helps you, give you a bit more feel?
My girlfriend's, that's one butt kicker, and then the other four that are attached to the rig. And they, for me, I'd sort of originally driven real cars, and you hop into the sim, you know, sort of 5 years ago, and you are missing a sense of contact with the road service, and that's as close as I've been able to find it together with the GS4 that we run in the seat, just to get more of a grounded feeling and get a bit of feedback through what the suspension system would transfer into the chassis. That then comes back through to your body. I don't know. To me, it helps.
Awesome, Andrew. Thank you very much. Congratulations, and
fantastic stuff.
Plenty more excitement to come over the next couple of months.
Take care. Thank you very much. And that was the winner from the Pro-Am Sim Racing Driver Competition, Andrew Lawrenson. We've now got, I believe, in a few moments' time, we're going to have our Race 2 winner, our winner of the real Pro and Am drivers taking part in this GT World Challenge Asia by Tarmac Works competition. So, again, great stuff from all our drivers. Before we do speak to our race winner, Pariace, I just want to congratulate each and every one of the drivers that have taken part in both races today. The level of racecraft, of talent, of dedication, of commitment that we've seen from all these drivers, Ben, it's just a sight to behold. They're learning. There is mistakes. There'll always be mistakes. There'll always be accidents in motor racing. But like Andrew's just said there, they take this seriously. The amount of dedication once you get out onto the track, it's fabulous to see, isn't it? Really.
Yeah, but classic Aussies just having a great time. They've just got such an infectious way of looking at life, and clearly the whole of the Laundry House team really just enjoying this experience. Of course, sadly for the GT World Challenge Asia Series, not able to run this year. So for the real world drivers, this is their opportunity to quench their competitive thirst. And then, of course, for the sim drivers, great for them to be involved in the real world drivers. Andrew Lawrenson coming from a little bit of real world driving himself, although now kind of making his name in this the virtual world, and ultimately just having a laugh. And amazing commitment, as you say, to hear them doing at least every other day, getting some laps in, working on setups, working on their amazing press release that they sent to David and I at the start of the week. Just having a good time. I think Paul's disconnected from us just a little bit over. Sorry. So he's just sort of faded like a ghost into the distance. We're just waiting to speak to David Impadiachi. He's got a couple of technical things to do to perhaps get online to us before we head off air. But ultimately, what an entertaining couple of hours that you've had. And we've got a couple more races coming up for you. The next race on the 10th of November. So put that in your diary for another hours worth of real world racing and sim world racing. If we don't get dividends soon, we're going to have to say goodbye, I think, because we've had some very, very entertaining races. Thank you so much for David Addison to join us from the real world of the Spa 24 Hours to the virtual world here. And look, Paul just magically reappears.
Just like the Back to the Future films, I fade away and then somebody does something and I come back again. So sorry about that one, Ben, to leave you a little bit in suspense, and I return by the magic of the internet. As you were saying, Ben, it's been an incredible second round of the championship, as always. It's been incredible to have yourself and David Addison in the comms box, lending your voices to these action-packed, shall we say, 2 events that we've had so far. We were hoping to speak to Divishan Padiache, who won the race for the real world drivers. I'm not sure if Divishan's going to be available to speak to or not before we round out this broadcast. I'm sure it'll be whispered in our ears in a few short moments' time. But just in case he's not, Ben, any final thoughts on the action that you've seen out on track today?
No, I just want to go again. That was fantastic racing, fantastic action across both championships. Sometimes the sim guys so good that the racing actually is a bit stale, but today was really, really good. The real world drivers provided excellent entertainment. Addison was on top form with his commentary. What's not to love? Can't wait to go again.
Yep, absolutely. And how much of that, by the way, do you think is to do with the circuit? Because Laguna Seca is we don't see it very often in these short format events. It produced a storming couple of races.
As you know, as we said at the top of the broadcast, Paul, it's a difficult track. It doesn't look difficult, but those medium speed corners, the fact that there's no runoff, it is difficult to extract the best performance. And if you lose time in one corner, you lose time for 3 corners. And so that definitely does provide interesting and exciting action. And in fact, you know, ACC as a platform has got great tracks represented all of the Intercontinental GT Series and the World Challenge Europe Championship from the last 2 years. So it was really a fantastic platform to get your teeth into. And if you're watching and going, well, how can I do this? Well, download yourself Assetto Corsa Competizione. You can download the GT4 car pack. There's loads of GT4 cars to play with, or all the cars you've seen today in GT3 format. There's loads of multiplayer online racing to get involved with, and of course, hone your skills in the career mode or indeed just in the single race mode. it's wicked to do that, and I'm going to go and do a bit more now because I'm kind of addicted.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean, and I've taken the day off today, so I'm available to do that as well. And great point, Ben. Well worth reiterating to everybody at home. If you are watching this and you are wondering how you get involved, highly recommend that you give this sim racing game a go yourself. It's brilliant fun, the closest that we're ever going to get, I think, to driving the real world championships in these real cars on the real tracks. So,
Absolutely.
cannot recommend that one enough. And I think I've just heard a little beep in my ear. Didn't quite catch what it was, but I think we're about to round off the show. So, Mr. David Addison, if you are still there, sir, thank you very much. Any final thoughts from round two?
I would echo exactly what Ben said. Go again, because the racing gets better and better. I tell you what, I do like the pit stop element of this. We didn't have it in the initial races. We had a straight hour's worth of racing, and even though it is there's no window, it's not done to a delta time like you have in real world racing. I still think that this is giving us something else, and exactly what we said, was it 2 and a bit hours ago now, about needing to be careful in where you rejoin. That seemed to be so true, particularly in those last few laps of that second race, the real world drivers race, with people getting themselves in strife. They'll learn about that because it's part and parcel of it. We've had some great racing. We've had some incidents. There'll be lots of arguments, I'm sure, in Discord now amongst the drivers as to who hit who and whose fault it was. But yeah, it's what we want to see. It's good racing, bit of needle, bit of argument, bit of controversy, and the story will carry on next time out.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, David Addison and Ben Constanduris next to me in the virtual studio. Last comments on the race before we close out?
See you next time.
In fact, I am just being told, actually, we got excited and we tried to leave too early. I've just been told by our race control that we have got Division Padiache, our race one winner from the Real World Pro Series. So, Division, congratulations, another win, 2 out of 2.
Thank you. Yeah, it's good to get 2 wins out of 2 races. So I think it was a little bit unexpected, but yeah, it's good to get a victory today.
Fantastic performance. And we said before the race started, down in 9th position on the grid, I think it was, you are in the heart of the danger zone. Did you approach T1 any differently for being so far down?
Like before the start of the race, I was just discussing with my mate. So my mate was on pole, so I was a bit disappointed that he got taken out. But we just said, look, just get through the first corner, and then just after that, just stay out of trouble. So that's all I did. I just saw what happened at turn 1, and I just tried to stay clear of it. I think I've been in this position in real life before, so I just sort of did the exact same thing on the sim.
Yeah, I mean, great driving to get all the way up so quickly. From your own personal performance point of view, have you learned anything new about the car and the simulation and the competition since last time we saw you in action at Monza?
I need to do more practice, probably. I was probably a little bit underprepared this time around because I actually had some real world racing come up last minute. So that sort of took my focus, and I jumped in here and didn't do as many laps. And as soon as I got in, I was like, all right, I'm a bit off the pace compared to Monza. And I knew that straight away, but I knew if I just can have a good race car. So I always have a good race setup. I think qualifying is a bit of a weak point at the moment. But the race car was mega. Like, it was just really consistent, really good over curbs as well, which definitely helped. And I just knew, so once I get to the race, just stay out of trouble, and I think it'll be fine after that.
Well, if that's you under-practiced, then I'm sure I speak on behalf of the entirety of the grid in saying we don't want to see you practice, because you've got 2 from 2 and charge it on into the end of the championship. Feels like it's yours to lose now, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't really think about it sort of race by race basis. I think I sort of think about, even if I finished, like today, I think we sort of lucked into first more than earned it. But over a championship, even if I was sort of committed to second or third. I don't know what happened in front with, I think some of the leaders had an accident. I couldn't really see what was going on. But I was just thinking, all right, I'm happy here. And as soon as people started crashing, I was like, all right, I'll push now and then get going.
Well, congratulations again, Devisham. Another
Oh, good.
fantastic performance. Thank you for joining us. And thank you, Ben Constanduros. Thank you, David Addison. Thank you, the boys and girls over at AK Informatica. And most importantly of all, thank you, everybody at home, for tuning in. This has been the GT World Challenge Asia Series, powered by Tarmac Works. And until next time, we'll see you out on the track. Thanks very much. Bye-bye. Oh.